Meet Nico, a covert agent trained to survive Vietnam. Nico has a 6th-degree black belt in Aikido and family in the Mafia.
When I put out the fires, I stop spills. We are being lied to by some of the most sophisticated people on Earth.
You just made number 4 on the most wanted list.
I know we've had our disagreements.
How much money is enough?
I don't need that kind of problem right now.
Get rid of the problem.
You mean mercenaries?
These people have a warrior.
Did you beat up on this little native man?
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare, from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on, and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss 2 films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise. And at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
We're talking 2 of the darkest and most cynical movies we've probably ever covered next week, and the patrons voted for it, so join the sleaze.
We decided on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover as well. Patreon subscribers also get an on-air shout-out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for officially over 3 years. There's something like
Crazy.
70 or 80 bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series where we talk about new release genre movies, which, believe it or not, they are still coming out, and we're getting closer
slower,
to them.
But yep.
We're getting closer to them once again coming out, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Even more. Speaking of which, we do have a bunch of shout-outs to give this week. So thanks to Alistair Brown, Paul Merrick, Chad O'Neill, Derek O'Pearl, Joe Prestiani. He will be a big fan of what we're talking about this week. Nathan and Logan Feldman. So thanks to all of you folks for signing up. Hope you're enjoying those bonus episodes.
Yes, thank you.
That's the one plug for the week. The other plug, as always, is Apple Podcasts. If you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts, and I see the stats, I see you right now listening, scroll down to the very bottom while you're listening to this and give us a good old rating and review down there. It helps us climb the ranks over at iTunes and find new listeners. And then the last plug, the newer plug, merch. If you guys like the poster art that local Toronto horror artists did for the podcast, you can now get that put on just about anything that you want. You can get it on a mug, a pillow, a notebook, a sweatshirt, whatever you can think of. It's out there, and some people have probably bought it. Some of you guys are freaks. Some of you guys have bought some weird items. So if you have any interest in that, it's in the link in the description, as well as at sleazoidspodcast.com. Whew. All right. The intro is getting a mouthful, but we are through. Welcome back. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back. I think 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you guys, free listeners, would have heard from us, and we had a crazy episode, a monster episode, with special guest hip-hop writer for Rolling Stone and Pitchfork, Jason Buford, came on, and he wanted to bring on some blaxploitation, satirical self-representation. So we talked, 1, Rudy Ray Moore, 1977, Petey Wheatstraw, the devil's son-in-law, which is exactly what it sounds like. Rudy Ray Moore, he makes a deal with the devil to give the devil a grandchild via his ugly daughter, if the devil will give him a magic pimp cane that he can use to get revenge on rival comedy club owners who massacred him gangster movie style.
Yep, that was well described. That is exactly it.
That is the premise of that film. It was wonderful. And we paired it with Spike Lee, his sort of new millennium film from 2000, Bamboozled, which was among the most racist movies you will pretty much ever watch, very much intentionally.
Yes.
We had to talk about that one for over an hour. I don't think I can summarize that in a log line for you, but if you ever wanted to see Spike Lee visualizing a modern minstrel show, and Damon Wayans doing white guy voice. That is what Bamboozled was about, and we had a lot of fun breaking those down with Jason Buford and the history of stereotypical and racist imagery in American film. It was an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
But last week for the patrons, we did a bit of a left turn off of that, and we kind of felt like in prep for today's episode, we kind of felt like we wanted to talk about another auteur, both in front and behind the camera. So who better than Sylvester Stallone?
Absolutely.
We talked Rocky and Rocky 2. I don't think anyone needs a description on what those films are or what that episode was about. We had a lot of fun talking about Sylvester Stallone again. And again, mostly it was prep to get into this idea of, sort of like the lead actor as someone who is in control of the film. Sylvester Stallone also obviously having written the original Rocky screenplay, starring in the film, and then going on to direct Rocky 2. And it was interesting to see some of his ego, I think, take over a little bit in the second one.
A little bit, yeah.
Which is going to be something that we are going to see today. Where we have special
Nothing but
returning.
Ego.
More than Stallone. We're going to talk about some ego. We have a special returning guest, the champion, I think, of the podcast.
That's right.
I think you got overtaken very briefly by Perry Rowland, who has appeared, I think, 3 times. But I believe that this is Andrew's 4th time, and so Andrew, reigning champion, our Australian correspondent from the Bunta Vista podcast. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm back. Back and better than ever.
He's holding the belt over his head.
That's right, with no mask on, just a champion.
Standing over Dolph Lundgren's immobile body.
Yes.
Shouting to the heavens. Very pleased with myself. I was reading a lot about Sylvester Stallone over the last week for some reason. I found like a bunch of columns on like Ain't It Cool News.
God, that was a scary place for a long time. That's the host of that Blade 2 review where the guy just gets super horny the whole time.
But this was around the time that Rocky Balboa was coming out, so like 2016 or something like that. And they said, hey, write in with your questions and we'll get Sylvester Stallone to answer them. And he did like 5 separate columns of just taking correspondence from readers and answering questions about like, what was the worst movie you made? And
okay, so this was this Rocky or Rambo?
This was Rocky Balboa.
Oh,
this
this one,
the sixth one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so the one from like the mid 2000s.
Yeah, the one where he came back as just like an old dude, and Adrian's dead, and Milo Ventimigliana, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. That guy from Heroes is his adult son, and so he's like doing promo for that, but taking all these questions and. Yeah, he's very, very like self-effacing and very like talking about, Saturday Night Fever. I was reading about Saturday Night Fever for some reason and how he directed the sequel, Staying Alive.
Right.
He did. I remember that.
Yep.
Which was notoriously shit-canned by everybody.
Yeah. I've never seen it personally, but I did see the reviews.
Yeah, so thoroughly panned, and he's all credit to him. He can absolutely look back at his career and go, oh, here's where I very distinctly went wrong in doing the following things. And I also discovered through going down this rabbit hole that Saturday Night Fever itself was based on an article in the New York Post, like just a long form article by a British rock writer about the new Saturday night. And he had written this very long-form thing about like hanging out at the 2000 Odyssey disco that is depicted in the movie and meeting all these characters. And they optioned the article and got him to write a script out of it based on his own article. And then years later, he was like, oh, I made that whole thing up. It was like it was the 70s.
Incredible.
Nobody gave a shit what you turned in. He said, I went out to the club one night and there wasn't really anybody there, and some guy came out and vomited onto my pants, and then I had to go home.
And that just wouldn't have made a great story. So
Yeah,
that's
so
hilarious.
instead he
Had to
just
spice it up.
and so he invented the character of Vincent that John Travolta would go on to play to great accord.
That's unreal.
Well, I mean,
But-
today we're going to be talking about someone who has never made up a story about themselves.
Yeah, speaking of liars,
That's it. We're going to talk about one of cinema's most famous self-aggrandizing bullshit artists. I think.
I have nothing
So yeah,
but respect
Andrew,
for it.
what two films are we talking about this week?
So we're talking about Steven Seagal's first movie, his very first movie, Above the Law, and we're pairing that with his first his directorial debut on Deadly Ground. And I don't know if these would necessarily be the first Seagal movies I would think to watch. They're definitely right up there in the like early stage batshit insane Seagal stuff. But you guys have already talked about some of my favorite ones of his in the past. But what I think really ties these movies together is first you get the look at Steven Seagal in his like original form, where he was coming out, and apparently was a bankable movie star. The
Yeah,
movie made
I
money.
can't wait to discuss how it is that he got
Yes.
into this
Yeah.
first movie. It's amazing.
Yes,
What a time
me
period.
too. So, and then you follow that up with him having made a series of successful movies and being allowed to make the movie that he wants to make, and everything that comes along with that. And in both cases, they're kind of tied together by this strange thread of like Steven Seagal movies that kind of make a good point, but do it in the worst way possible.
Yeah,
They're just,
absolutely.
you're like, I agree with what you're saying, but could you not do it like that? It's,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like definitely it was rewatching Above the Law recently that made me go, oh, there's a bunch of takes in here that like modern leftists would agree with.
Yeah, well, I mean, there were parts that reminded me of, in terms of what it's trying to say of one of our favorite movies that we talked about recently and just got announced as getting a Criterion release soon, Deep Cover by Bill Duke.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is
Yeah.
like where it's just Lawrence Fishburne as an undercover cop who ends up through the process of trying to take down drug traffickers, finds out, it leads all the way to, sort of like the CIA and the Iran-Contra and, like a lot of the deals with the politicians and everything like that. And that movie takes that premise very existentially seriously as Lawrence Fishburne, being a black man, and that, the drugs on the streets, hurting his family and getting his father killed and everything is, something that he became a cop to, some idea of preventing that from happening. And he realizes that, he's essentially just helped it happen. And it's really funny watching Steven Seagal take that exact same idea and make it about how he just really needs to destroy various public spaces with people's bodies.
Yeah, you can have like the sort of holier than thou moralizing that his character does in this movie, but it's also all being delivered by a thoroughly unlikable character who is also doing like a whole bunch of civil liberties violations and extrajudicial killings.
Yes.
And most of the time,
So
completely based on somebody just attacking his ego. Like it's got half the time
Yeah.
he gets in a fight with someone, it's because someone insults him personally, not like they're a criminal of sorts or something like that. Very funny.
Well, I mean, yeah. So the first movie, Above the Law, it has a lot of the real hallmarks of what would come to be Seagal's like trademark looks in his early movies, which is part of like, so if we're going to talk about Seagal, the actor, the person who made this string of movies with 3-word titles at the start of his career.
Yes. We're talking.
This is-
We already covered 2 3-word titles, and we're talking about 2 3-word titles today.
Again, yes.
Yep. And So there's something. I mean, like, you know, we all love Arnold Schwarzenegger for obvious reasons. Like Sylvester Stallone, the big stars of that era, like Bruce Willis and everything. You can look at all of them, and it's pretty obvious what the audience saw in them, right?
Yeah.
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, absolutely gigantic freak show of a dude, but also strangely charismatic, and obviously someone who like willed himself into that position. Sylvester Stallone, as much of a goof as he can be and as many missteps as he's made, is also obviously someone who genuinely has a love for like cinema and writing and various art forms and everything, you know.
Well, yeah, and
like,
one thing we talked about with Rocky last week, like there's so much amazing character detail. Like he waited, obviously famously, he said he didn't want anyone other than him playing the lead role because obviously I think he knew what he had on a character level, but also he completely understood like every micro gesture he wanted to get out of that, you know, to make that character such a sweetheart and everything. Like there's a real understanding of characterization that he has as a performer even and a writer. And yeah, Seagal, I wouldn't say quite the same thing.
Have you seen Rocky Balboa? That one where he's old?
Yeah.
Because that's another one where, like, he obviously, you know, he wrote all of that and everything, and he obviously had that deeply personal connection to it of the movie was clearly supposed to be about getting old and losing things and having people tell you that you're not cutting it anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And how you process that and deal with it in your life and how you deal with personal loss.
He wrote First Blood as well.
Right.
Yeah. So like, you know, you can see that man obviously has talent and has great affection for the things he's doing. Bruce Willis was already like a charismatic, you know, leading man in a well-regarded sitcom. And then he kind of, you know, forged a bit of his own lane in action movies of like the sort of, you know, sardonic but also like mortal action hero. Compared to like Arnie and Commando, you know? Seagal is the one that has always been absolutely fascinating to me because I don't know what the fuck anybody has ever seen in this guy. Like I don't understand it. I don't get it in any way because there's all like those sorts of trademarks of his early films are so consistent, right?
Yeah.
That it's really clear that it's his fingerprints on the film.
Definitely.
It's him going, you know what's cool is when a cop comes in and bullies the fuck out of everybody in the place.
Yeah. And
or when
like, if anyone steps to him, he absolutely must defeat them physically. Like there's that's just how he sees any conflict. Like it's something to physically dominate rather than, you know, use any type of intelligence whatsoever, really.
Yeah, we were trying to theorize whether he got some sort of involvement in the writing on some of his films or whether he just ad-libbed stuff and they were like, well, I mean, I guess he's sort of the star producer, so we kind of have to do it. But like Hard to Kill has like an 8-minute like Buddhist montage.
Right. Yeah.
I think I would need to double check this, but I think like even from the first movie, I'm pretty sure he's credited as a producer on Above the Law. Because, as we will get into, Above the Law is theoretically vaguely adapted from Steven Seagal's real life, according to Steven Seagal.
Yes, we'll definitely get into that. The whole creation or how Above the Law came to be a production is really, really insane, and we'll get into that when we get into when we jump into Above the Law. But the other one, Andrew, I don't think we've mentioned it yet.
On Deadly Ground. This is the directorial debut of Steven Seagal. He had clearly banked enough money from Under Siege,
Right.
To have enough sway to produce, write, and direct a movie.
Yeah, he
that
actually weaponized his contract for Under Siege 2 to be allowed to direct this movie because they weren't going to let him direct it. And then he said, if you let me direct it, I'll do Under Siege 2. And they said, fuck yeah, go ahead, whatever you want.
That's
we don't
hilarious. And it's the only movie that he ever directed, too, which I just find endlessly fascinating.
Well, because it was his worst received movie. That's what the funniest thing is.
Really?
That Andrew was just talking about, like, what did people see in Steven Seagal as soon as they saw the most Steven Seagal, which is On Deadly Ground, like it was very heavily rejected.
That's hilarious because I'm like the complete opposite.
I love Van Damme movies, right?
Yeah.
I think that Van Damme, like in most of his movies, is not doing any kind of like good acting performance, but I think that he is someone with an innate charisma.
Yeah.
Like I think that he's just likable to me, you know? Whereas, just with Seagal, with these early movies, it's like the character is always like this surly, glowering, like just perpetually kind of snarky and pissy with everyone. He's holier than thou. He knows better than everyone he speaks to. Above the Law is probably the one where he like I think this one's a rare Seagal thing in the sense that there is like a single point in the movie where he's in some physical jeopardy for about 15 seconds.
And I noticed that. Like I was like, oh my God, he's actually in trouble. That's crazy.
He's usually very easily dispatching of everyone around him.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I would say it's absolutely a trademark of Seagal's movies, particularly like his pre-direct-to-DVD run. That his character is never in any kind of danger or jeopardy.
And he's excited about the violence too. There's always something like, oh, they're here, I get to play now, that kind of shit.
Yeah, or in any given conflict, he's like actively egging people on.
Yes, he's looking for the fight. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's so weird about it to me, and this will continue to come up, is, again, this is very clearly, you can tell by the consistency with which this appears in his characters, this is very clearly what Steven Seagal thinks of as the traits of a cool guy.
Yeah.
Of a guy that
cool,
everyone's like, wow.
Man.
Yeah, what a badass, man. He went into that place and he egged a guy on into fighting with him while knowing that he was going to physically destroy him immediately, you know?
Yeah.
I can't wait until I finally push this guy far enough that he takes a swing at me and I can break his forearm in half. You know? It's such an antithesis to like the kind of, the sort of action movie trope of the character who like just wants to be left alone.
Right, he's forced into the violence. Right.
Yeah, the person who's like, hey, just I'm thinking of like a Korean movie that I really love, The Man from Nowhere.
Yeah.
Great movie. Same sort of thing. Quiet guy, wants to be left alone, wants to mind his own business.
Like Jackie Chan's famous for that. He's always like, I don't want any trouble, that kind of thing. And then he gets into a fight regardless. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it's someone who's capable of defending themselves and winning fights and all that sort of thing, but it's only when they're pushed to it, you know? Like, I think a lot of Van Damme movies are like that. This one, it's just he's actively instigating conflict with people while knowing full well that he's just going to fucking ruin them.
On Deadly Ground has one of the funniest versions of someone attempting to do that I've ever seen, and we'll probably have to save it for when we get into it. But it's one of the funniest like beats that I've like ever seen in a movie. Was Steven Seagal trying to say, "Look, I didn't want to do violence, okay?"
It's like, really?
It seemed a lot like you were enjoying the violence.
Yeah. But yeah, that being said, I think we are going to jump into it here. We are going to start out with Above the Law.
You don't live the way other people live.
You're officially suspended, this guy.
The feds come in, the doors close, nobody hears, smells, or sees anything.
One man.
You just made number 4 on the most wanted list.
One obsession.
I want to be number 1.
One rule.
You guys think you're above the law. You ain't above mine.
Nico.
All right, we are talking Above the Law, or also known as Nico. Above the Law.
Yeah, the copy I have, the title card just says Nico.
Oh, really? Wow.
There you go. It is the 1988 American action thriller film written, produced, and directed by Andrew Davis. Andrew Davis, interesting little career. He also did obviously Under Siege, which is considered sort of like the one of the classics. But he also did like the Harrison Ford The Fugitive. He did. We actually already talked about him once on this show, where we did his A Perfect Murder with Michael Douglas and Gwyneth Paltrow, where he tried to kind of get in on that sort of erotic thriller of the 90s. Andrew Davis is what I would call a king of the a term that's been kind of coined in our Discord lately, of the 3-star classic.
Yeah.
He never really made a movie better than that, but also I don't think I've seen a movie that he's made that's like worse than that either. He just kind of hung out in that realm where it's like, if it's on TV in the background, you could look up every once in a while and be like, this isn't a bad little movie.
Yeah.
I had The Fugitive on the other day, and I was just sort of thinking, it's a very workmanlike movie.
Yes.
It's like the pacing is good. It kind of keeps his foot on the pedal. There's like virtually nothing imaginative happening in the way of like framing and cinematography or anything like that. There's nothing particularly exciting or anything. Like it's just a very sort of workmanlike, by the numbers movie. And I would say he also has that trademark of lots of cop movies that are all set in Chicago, and they all star that same like little set of actors who were all real cops.
Yeah.
The guys who look and sound like non-actors because that's what they are. So
yeah, well, this has a really interesting sort of production history, because it is the first Steven Seagal movie, and you might be wondering, how did this dude, who he grew up in he was born in Michigan, and then his family moved him to L.A., where he met an old Chinese man who essentially introduced him to martial arts, and he worked out in L.A. He eventually moved to where did he move to? Was it Japan?
He moved to Japan. I believe he worked or he was hanging around somewhere with an old Japanese guy around some type of dojo or garden or whatever, who introduced him to some stuff and encouraged him to visit Japan, which he did at some point, and took up the martial art of Aikido. Came back to America, and I think he met a Japanese girl in America whose father ran an Aikido dojo in Japan, and then he went back with her. And so, his claim, which is kind of repeated in the movie itself, was that he was a very young white guy in Japan running a Japanese martial arts dojo in the 70s.
He still claims to be the first American to run his own dojo in Japan.
And that, especially with the time period, that seems really unlikely to me. But this is I've seen both these movies a whole bunch of times. But I was trying to do a little reading before this one, right? And I found this profile in the LA Times from 1988. And it's this absurdly long profile where someone has spent a week just cruising around with Steven Seagal and listening to him talk absolute shit. And this gives you an idea of this whole thing that has happened with him, because I'm sure that what you're referring to here, Josh, is the fact that he had some kind of association with Michael Ovitz.
Yes.
Who was the leader of the Creative Artists Agency and was considered the most powerful agent in Hollywood through the 80s. Yeah. He went on to run Disney at some point. He was Michael Eisner's successor at Disney briefly.
Yep.
So big time Hollywood dude. And the story is that, he got Seagal into movies. Although There are a few different versions of that story. But if I may read to you a little bit from this profile, and it will give you a bit of an idea of what kind of push he was getting before he had even made a movie. Right?
Yeah, this is crazy.
So this is from this 1988 profile. Tall and lean with the rough, good looks of a daredevil jet pilot. Okay. Steven Seagal is more than just a 6'4" martial arts wizard who can flip a man 5 feet in the air with a flick of his wrist. His fans proclaim that he's a star waiting to be born. And let's talk fans. Seagal has an enthusiastic film studio booster, Warner Brothers president Terry Semel, a mega potent Hollywood agent pal, Michael Ovitz, the fearsome leader of Creative Artists Agency, and a high-profile public relations firm to go along with a model starlet wife, Kelly LeBrock. But how does a virtual unknown suddenly emerge with a starring role and a story credit in a studio film? How's this for an answer? Make sure your agent is Mike Ovitz. According to many accounts, the chief of CAA, Hollywood's leading talent agency, is not only a longtime martial arts enthusiast, but actually studied with Seagal. As they became friendly, the idea of Seagal as an action hero began to take shape. Now, something that's not really explained in detail here is a thing that is, as far as I know, the sort of commonly accepted version of Seagal's origin story, which is that Mike Ovitz made a bet with somebody else that he could turn anyone into an action star.
That's what I read too.
That's the one I'm going to believe. So
yes,
yeah. So Michael
hilarious.
Ovitz, Seagal's career is a flex by a Hollywood agent who said, "I could turn anyone into an action star. I don't care who it is."
And then he created a monster that he could not control.
He absolutely did, and they had several public partings later on. But yeah, he bet that he could make anyone a star, including his very uncharismatic martial arts instructor. But this is back to the profile. According to Seagal's account, once execs at Warner's got interested, they made quite a sales pitch. When I met with Terry Semel and Mark Canton, they told me, "We'd like to make you part of the family here." They explained that they'd acquired a ton of material for Clint Eastwood, but that he wasn't getting any younger, and he wanted to do a lot more projects on his own. That's when they said, "We'd like to see you take his place. We think you can be the next Eastwood." Then they gave me a pile of scripts and basically said, "Pick one and we'll do it with you." Did Warner's really give this unknown martial arts pro carte blanche? Semel's description of their encounter was somewhat less vivid. Quote, "I don't think it was a matter of anyone replacing Clint. He's gone far beyond being just an action star," Semel said. But when you do look at action stars, it's a very short list. Stallone, Norris, Schwarzenegger, maybe a couple of others. The key question was always, who is that rare young guy coming up who can handle those physical roles? We think Steven could be it. Semel searched for the right words. Steven seems to exude this enormous sense of focus and intensity. He has this serious look that, well, when you look at him, you see danger. And of course, the script that he chose from the big pile of scripts was Above the Law. Which
by the way, was Seagal was at least right in the sense that was a screenplay that was originally written in-house by Warner Brothers for Clint Eastwood at the time.
Okay.
So they...
before they rewrote it to... because obviously... Andrew Davis and Seagal together, they obviously got story and writing credit on it because they completely overhauled it to be in part literally about Seagal's backstory and everything like that. Like literally the movie opens on childhood pictures of Steven Seagal.
And then he's like, I was 17 training with the Masters. And then it shows him like taking on 4 guys at the same time, but in a training. Like, yeah, it's hilarious.
He's doing those amazing, like, bullshit Aikido demonstrations. Actually, sorry, I'll retract that just to say, you can just Google, like, Aikido demonstration and watch a few videos on YouTube and just have a nice little chuckle to yourself, because it's very funny. They're those ones where somebody runs at an instructor who just kind of waves their hand near them, and the person like does a double flip onto the mats.
There's actually a hilarious clip of Seagal at an official like karate keto conference of some kind, and he's doing a demonstration where everyone was clearly instructed to just flip and go with whatever he was doing, and it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
That is apparently. That was what I read, that when Michael Ovitz got Warner Brothers interested, they sent them a screen test of him doing that, and they thought they were watching a real martial artist, and they told him that he's more of like a Jackie Chan than he is like an Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so when they showed them the video, which was a screen test of him and his students just staging him being the coolest guy you've ever seen.
Yeah.
That was what convinced them to take the meeting with him.
Man.
However,
the 90s were wild.
I will say, in the footage that is shown at the start of this, you get to see another Steven Seagal hallmark, right? Which is him, like, working incredibly stiff with stunt people. Because, like, very frequently, I think, in his movies, you can see him... like the shots at the beginning of this where he's doing the stuff with like students in a dojo. Mm-hmm. He's still doing that shit where he's like pulling somebody in and clotheslining them across the throat as hard as he possibly can and like turning someone all the way inside out kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think like because so many of his movies involve fight scenes where he's doing Aikido stuff and like like either pulling somebody into his forearm as he hits them and slams them down to the ground kind of thing. You can see in a lot of movies that he is just hitting stunt people really, really hard.
Yeah.
And he has a notorious reputation for hitting stunt people really hard and being very uncool about it.
Doesn't shock me, but like it's just that's got to be probably the most jackass thing you can do as a stuntman, right? That's probably got to be the number one no doing rule. Like just this is off limits. Like,
well, yeah, like or at the very least, it's the kind of thing where it needs to be agreed. Like I remember reading Jackie Chan's autobiography years ago, and he talked about how he was one of the stuntmen for I think Enter the Dragon.
Yeah,
and so
you can actually see him if you look for him in the movie.
Yeah, and so. The stunt that he had to do with Bruce Lee was he had to get kicked and like go flying backwards through like a paper dojo wall kind of thing, and fall from 6 feet or 10 feet or whatever onto his back outside of that. And I think they had already been doing it with some stuntmen, and because there was this big drop, they were doing it with wires, and so they were kind of having the person go back through the thing. And then sort of lowering them down, but they were going, it looks shitty, because this person's kind of wobbling as they fall down towards the ground. And it took Jackie Chan coming forward and saying, I'll volunteer to do this stunt, and what I need you to do is, at the moment Bruce Lee kicks me in the chest, I need you guys to haul on the wires as hard as you can so that I go flying backwards through the paper wall, but then just let go. So that he just free falls for the last bit of it, lands on his back. And he insisted in his telling of the story that the part that hurt the most was still getting kicked in the chest by Bruce Lee. But that's still a situation where, like, I know that we all love like 80s Hong Kong kung fu movies and stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's so many of them that I watch where I'm just like, God damn, that is some reckless stunt work.
Right.
like the stuff people do to their bodies, just throwing themselves off things. There's plenty of things that I look at when I'm watching a movie like that, and I always find myself saying to my wife, like showing her a particular stunt and going, there's only one way to achieve that effect, and that is by throwing your body like parallel to the ground off that 20-foot high surface,
Yeah.
But in all of those cases, that was still someone that said, I'll do it.
Right.
Somebody volunteered for it. It wasn't going, you have to do a fight scene with Steven Seagal and he's just going to hit you as hard as he can. Like, so I think that's the aspect of it, Jamie, that makes it the huge jackass award
Right.
is the
Lack of
like
consent to being punched in the face.
well, and also part of like stunt work and fight choreography and stuff like that is learning how to do those things without having to
Right,
actually
of
be
course.
like hit by a real baseball bat, you know?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
But so this is also from the same profile, right? And this is the thing that will immediately in the intro of the movie be kind of referred to as the plot. So we have the dojo at the start and him saying, "I went to Japan and opened a dojo." And
That was a good. That's a pretty good one.
That's good, yeah.
you just got to squint while you do it.
Yeah, that's the key. Exactly. You can barely see.
Yeah. And then we jump straight from there to, and then I went to Vietnam, and then I was immediately recruited into the CIA.
At 22.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, how old is he meant to be? What the fuck?
Yeah,
I feel like we missed a few
literally
steps.
like in the screenwriting process, he starts blending his actual life with like this fictional mythical super cop version of himself.
And there's also something that Seagal always does too, which is he's not only like an expert in fighting and guns and like CIA training and all that, but he knows every trade and craft known to man. Like he knows how to weld, he knows how to do oil rigs later on, all that kind of shit. It's just he's the working man, but he's also just so much more talented than your normal man as well.
Well, again, this is what would go on to be the hallmark of the cinematic Seagal run of movies, which is
which was he picked up a random derivative 80s action movie script about a cop getting some sort of revenge on some corrupt institution or that hurt his family or something or other. And he
just
plays a
inserts
dude
himself.
named Mason Storm or Gino Felino or John Hatcher. and
He does have the best names in the game.
He uses all of those skills, despite the fact that he's kind of this. He's a fun performer to watch, but he is kind of like this overtly kind of dull performer who doesn't have much range beyond like whispering the lines and just kind of being strangely calm about the absurdly violent situations that he finds himself in. One thing I noticed watching Above the Law, which I didn't remember quite as much when we watched Hard to Kill or Out for Justice, is but like even when he's like running, he's not really running. It's like this strange like there is a part where he full out sprints in this, which by the way, the goofiest formless sprint I've ever seen.
Oh yeah,
with his
he's got
arms,
like spaghetti arms.
Which leads me to believe that he just really doesn't do much actual exercise.
Yeah, he's no Tom Cruise, that's for sure.
But like Tom Cruise, you can absolutely find compilations of Steven Seagal running from all of his movies because he has this wild like you said, spaghetti arms, completely.
Yeah,
it's like his hands are just. He's lost
he doesn't
his wrist
close
joints,
them. He just like lets them flap around. It's very strange.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that's why they didn't have him do it like a whole lot in his movies, because most of these movies, including the two we're talking about here, like he hardly works up a sweat like fighting anyone.
Oh yeah, it's effortless.
And he hardly gets even like angry, despite the fact that like the stories are about how filled with rage and revenge that he should be. But I mean, Above the Law has a part where Sharon Stone, the wife, has to beg him to go for revenge, and he's like, what's that line that he gets about the baby?
Well, I just got home and you want me to go to revenge already. Jeez.
No, Sharon Stone at one point is begging him to be like, look, this is serious now. They tried to hurt your family. Don't you want to get revenge for your family? And like, this is clearly not something that a wife character would ever say in one of these movies. Yeah. But he had, he has to have that, despite the fact that he clearly really wants to hurt people. He needs to have that fake call to arms or that resistance that he has. But his line that he says at that moment is like, you ever notice how clean babies smell? Like nothing in the world has ever touched them.
So it's interesting you say that, because this is an aspect of Seagal that is touched on quite a bit by Roger Ebert in his review of this movie at the time it came out. But before I get to that, so the hallmark here, right, is Seagal as like a chameleon type figure who you're just supposed to accept as being like whatever background training and ethnicity he decides that he is for that movie. Because
the ethnicity part is one of my favorite. He's either he's Italian, he's Hispanic. Sometimes he is just part of the black community somehow in the neighborhood, and he always knows the neighborhood. And there's always a montage of him going up to people and being like, "Man, isn't it great to be part of the neighborhood?"
Yeah, and he knows he knows how to speak every language. You know, he knows all.
And
the
everyone
vernacular.
respects him. Everyone respects him. So in this one movie, here are the following things that Steven Seagal is supposed to be. He's supposed to be an Italian immigrant, a Japanese-speaking Aikido master who ran a dojo in Japan, a Vietnam veteran, a CIA agent, and a Chicago Vice Squad cop.
Yes.
Yeah, and this was all by like the age of 25 or something.
Yes. Yeah, and by the way, he's supposed to be like mid to maybe late 20s. And isn't he like 35 in this first movie that he did?
Yeah.
Judging by his hairline, I would say probably.
Well, yeah, but his hairline got fixed in later movies because I mean I'm guessing Warner Brothers paid for him to get those fixed.
I think they just stapled that thing on at some point. So in the LA Times profile, right?
Yeah.
They make reference to how maybe he has some kind of connection with CIA. And they're like, "Oh, but he doesn't talk about it." Until he does at extreme length, right? So they're saying that
wait, in the profile he says he was in the CIA?
Okay, so in this profile there's already been a little bit of reference to like, oh, and he also works as a bodyguard and he's protected heads of state and all kinds of stuff, right? And so he's made a few references to that. The writer hangs out with him for quite a while. Here's more of this profile, right? Quote, "In Asia, you'd be amazed how many people are connected with the agency," Seagal explained one night on the film set in Chicago where he was fighting off a migraine headache. "A lot of the American military has been over there since the occupation and they've become very connected to the intelligence community. These guys were my students. They saw my abilities, both with martial arts and with the language. My CIA godfather told me he'd never heard any American speak Japanese so well. I would say I was a prime candidate to be recruited." Did Seagal actually work for the CIA? He offered a qualified admission, or perhaps a qualified denial. Quote, "You can say that I lived in Asia for a long time, and in Japan I became close to several CIA agents," he said, choosing his words carefully. "And you could say that I became an advisor to several CIA agents in the field, and through my friends in the CIA met many powerful people and did special works and special favors." You are just saying that you were in the CIA.
Yeah.
Seagal declined to offer many details, refusing to cite specific missions or locales. However, when asked about the authenticity of a scene in Above the Law that shows an intelligence operative injecting a rival with a deadly chemical truth serum, Seagal said, quote, "That's not made up. That's something that really happened."
Awesome.
So basically, before
this just reminds me of remember we talked about it when we did the other episode when we did Hard to Kill and Out for Justice. We talked about how he had that cop show for a while. Forget what it was called.
Yeah.
Where he basically like it was a reality TV show where the premise was that Steven Seagal is like a real cop in like Louisiana, and eventually he
it was like a deputy. It was called Steven Seagal Lawman.
Yeah.
Yes,
Wasn't it?
he eventually did another season, I think, in like Arizona, and that's how he met all his border patrol buddies. That now he like writes like Q novels for them about the border and shit like that. Like all that stuff that he does now was started back then when he started just hanging out with real cops. But he claimed, and the reason that show, he claimed that he was like a real deputized cop during that show, and then because that he had graduated from the LA Police Academy, and everyone at like the LA Police Academy is like, we have no record of him ever stepping foot in this building.
Yeah,
and that was what he used to like. That was
he was probably undercover
to get this show to be like, I can do a real cop show with real cops because I trained with the LA Police Academy, and that's how I have to have a feeling that's how he gets all of his deals. Like that energy drink he had for a while called Lightning Bolt. He had an aftershave at one point.
What I would give to drink a can of Steven Seagal's Lightning Bolt.
Well,
in
yeah,
his profile,
now
right?
he's like an ambassador for Russian knife and firearm companies, like promoting their brand of weapons and trying to get them like legalized by lobbying the U.S. government and shit like that.
And why not? You know?
Oh my god.
The man's got to eat. The man's got to eat, and apparently he's got to eat a lot.
Yeah.
But so the writer in this profile kind of continues on from this point to say, oh, you know, like Seagal says, oh, but they won't tell you about my many great deeds for the CIA because it's secret. Wink. And the writer is like, well, you know, it was true because I contacted the CIA and the CIA said, we never discuss anybody's work history with us and we will never confirm or deny that an individual worked for us. And I'm just like, of course, it's the perfect grift. You say that you were in the CIA, and then somebody asks the CIA, and they go, I can't say that he wasn't in the CIA. It's like, done.
That's incredible. Oh my
so
god.
Perfect grift, and apparently everybody bought that shit hook, line, and sinker because he just goes on at length in this profile to talk about how he says that he was involved in like the Iranian Revolution. He says all kinds of shit. He basically talks about he gives the reporter the details of like some old pal of his who's some like Vietnam veteran is like, oh, for sure, me and Steve, we got into all kinds of action together. You know, we did missions, and the person's like what? And he's like, you know, missions. And it's just all very, very strange.
Yeah,
very
just
bullshit.
I wonder if it has anything to do with like the opening bit when he's in Vietnam with the CIA and he has Henry Silva is playing like a torture expert who is just there to deal with obviously the drug trafficking business. He's not there for, you know, sort of like the actual war or military intelligence that's going on there. That's one of my favorite bits about Steven Seagal getting very upset at the torture expert who's just like torturing this poor Vietnamese man. And he goes, are you actually getting any military intelligence out of this? And it's just like, would it be better if he was torturing him for the military intelligence?
And also, it's weird that he has this like quarrel about fucking violence and using violence in order to get the answers or go progress the mission, where in the next scene after it shows him, you know, return to the United States and he's become a cop and all that stuff, the first thing he does is go into a bar and beat the living shit out of two people for information. And you're just like, so what was the difference? Like what was your whole conundrum there inside your head? I don't really understand.
Yep. Hey, bro, are you doing personal torture on work time?
Exactly. If you're not on the clock,
doing work torture right now.
Yeah, you're not on the clock. No torture.
But so basically, this entire bullshit story that he has woven for this LA Times reporter is what he has written into this script, and he absolutely says to this reporter, "This movie is based on my life and my deeds." He also says that this movie is his attempt to make up for the stuff that he feels bad about, because much like in this movie where he is decrying the actions of the CIA, he's saying, yes, I went and did those things. You know, I told myself I was like being a good person, but really I just wanted to be a warrior. And I've realized much later on that, you know, I was doing those things for myself, and it was actually bad to go and do all of those cool kick-ass assassinations.
I'm shocked that he even had that revelation.
So him writing himself as the hero into the plot of this stupid movie is his attempt to make up for whatever
all his
war
CIA
crimes he claims to have done.
He's really a virtuous man. He really cares.
This is an incredible artifact of egomania.
Yes.
100%.
Incredibly absurd. I think as well just the way that the movie is structured, they move so quickly from this guy, martial arts legend. Now you've got that in your head. Veteran.
Oh, we also have that Nixon speech thrown in where he talks about how Lincoln said no one is above the law.
Right.
Just so you know, we got the Rick Dalton pointing at the screen like in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yes.
And then he's the CIA agent. He's having his dispute with Silva, with his awesome Dick Tracy villain face.
Yeah, Henry Silva is going psycho mode in this movie.
Yeah, he's loving it. He's chewing the scenery. And
even though he's in it for like 7 minutes.
And then he's just like, man, this is bullshit. I'm out of here. And then the next shot is just him being in Chicago being a cop. And then the movie continues like that for quite a while until they're like, now let's bring that CIA stuff back in here. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it is just like him like baptizing his baby in Chicago, like he's in like The Godfather and
Oh yeah.
He's married to a very young Sharon Stone who gets very little to do in this movie.
But emotes 100 times more than he ever does.
And I was glad to see though Pam Grier as his partner.
Yeah,
she was fun.
Yeah, she was fun.
Just in there doing a thing. Yeah, like I was saying before, I read Ebert's review of this movie because, again, very curious about what people thought about him at the time. Because when you're watching it, you know, with the distance and the context and knowing what we know about his career in general and how he seems like someone who is just perpetually full of shit, all that kind of stuff, it's very interesting to see what people thought of him like at the time. So this is from Ebert's review. Some people in Hollywood think Steven Seagal is the hot new action star, heir to Eastwood and Bronson, contemporary of Stallone, Norris, and Schwarzenegger. The influential calendar section of the LA Times carried a cover story more than a month ago outlining the campaign to establish Seagal in the box office big leagues. His stats. He's 6 foot 4 inches tall with a 6th-degree black belt in Aikido. He ran his own martial arts school in Japan before returning to Los Angeles, where he worked as an Aikido instructor and bodyguard, as the press information says, for stars and heads of state. He's married to actress Kelly LeBrock, the mom with the great lips. A studio executive was quoted as saying Seagal has, quote, extraordinary screen magnetism. With a build-up like that, doesn't Seagal's... With a build-up like that, doesn't Seagal's first movie almost have to be anticlimactic? And yet the curious thing is, Seagal more or less deserves the build-up. He does have a strong and particular screen presence. It is obvious he's doing a lot of his own stunts, and some of the fight sequences are impressive and apparently unfaked. Yeah, that's him fucking clubbing people on the set.
Yeah, he actually punches and kicks his people.
Yeah. He isn't just a hunk either. He can play tender.
He isn't just a hunk?
Yeah.
Roger Ebert thirsty.
That little ponytail, baby.
Yeah.
Again, I just can't. I don't get anybody.
I do get on some level. I think this idea that he has a unique presence. It is something. I just don't know that I would describe it as necessarily. You know, it is noticeably different, but I wouldn't say better, I guess, than like the kind of things that he's aping. You know, we were talking about, you know, sort of like a Stallone or a Schwarzenegger, and like he does something that's interesting in a way that I find more, I don't know if baffling is the word, but like he definitely, you know, his brand does fit decently into that kind of derivative action movie, and when he throws in all those weird autobiographical / I guess we should call them mythical details, like that stuff is strange enough that I feel like I get something out of it, even though, you know, he emphasizes putting in things that are what he thinks are cool over anything, you know, like sensible characterization in any meaningful way. You know, he doesn't care about that as much as he cares about at every moment sounding and looking cool.
But his version specifically.
For him, it's what he thinks would be very cool, not necessarily what other people.
He doesn't give a fuck about making his crew look cool or anything. It's just as long as he looks badass, then it's a good film.
But weirdly enough, he is so intense in that mission to do that. That you could tell he believes it on the screen.
Oh,
and
definitely.
In a way, I feel like there are moments.
Like
I think that's how it sells to me. Like, I do enjoy watching a lot of his stuff when I watch him, even if I recognize that he's doing something that is not, you know, really working.
That's what I was saying to my brother when we were watching. I can't remember which one we watched together because sometimes these blend a little bit. But I was just noticing that, like, without the sincerity of Seagal, and it just, these things would not work the way that they do. It's just because he believes in himself so much, to a fault, of course, but because of that, that's where the charm comes from. Like, the complete lack of irony, even when something is completely stupid, is definitely what sells these films for me.
Well, and too, in the action especially, because we talked about it when we did Hard to Kill and Out for Justice, but a lot of choreographers didn't like working with him because he would just essentially choreograph his own stuff, and he would introduce these weird nonsensical details into the choreography where, you know, obviously he does something so incredible that no one could do. And like in one of the early action scenes, there's a part where he does that classic action movie bit where he's riding on top of the car, right? He's like on the roof of the car,
right,
chasing a dude down, because he's the cop who's willing to go off hours to get the job done.
Exactly.
That's, you know, that's kind of the sort of tone that he's trying to set, and he's willing to do these extraordinary things, even though, you know, he's not willing to, you know, strain himself too physically. But he does ride on top of the roof of that car during, like, you know, like a chase scene, and it is shot, you know, by Davis in a way that it is a little intense, and then it's so ridiculous. What does he do? Honestly, he does what we were talking about when we talked about Halloween 4, where Michael Myers does this action movie bit where he's riding on top of on the roof, but it's so ridiculous because he's like this like supernatural physical force.
Yeah.
Basically, Seagal does the same thing where he takes his hand, he punches through the passenger side window, and he just grabs the dude's neck and starts strangling and choking him while he's holding on to the top of the car while the chase scene is still happening. And he strangles this guy for about 60 seconds while he is being thrown off the hood. And when the car does eventually stop, because the guy being strangled is like, just stop. He's not going to stop choking me. Like, stop the car. He stops the car. Seagal, without letting go of his neck, jumps off the roof and drags the man out by his neck through the broken window that he just punched through.
Yeah.
And like, that is just like an absurd physical detail that's like cartoon level shit that no one would put into, you know, another movie like this. I mean, like, I guess, you know, you can say that Arnold. Yeah, you would say that Arnold. Yeah, you would say that, like, you know, Arnold might do something, you know, physically ridiculous like that.
But that comes with the campiness, right?
Yeah, there is a difference because Seagal, especially this early 90s run, like, they are very serious, grounded in this movie in particular.
He's supposed to be a hardened cop in these, like, really, you know, crime-ridden cities, you know?
Yeah, and this one has that political element, but like Out for Justice, which was directed by John Flynn, you know, that has, you know, that movie was one I felt like I would have preferred more, because if it didn't have the Seagal-isms in it, I feel like it would have just been this really tough, on-the-streets kind of crime movie about, like, the community and the family melodrama with Bill Forsyth, who we found out behind the scenes, he, like, cut all of his shit out because Bill Forsyth, as a performer, was outshining him, and he didn't like that, and a whole bunch of shit like that. Movie. Yeah, but even like the violence in that, when like John Flynn shoots that like dude's leg getting shotgunned off, and Seagal like butcher knifing people's limbs off and shit like that. Like it's so crazy, and it walks that line of being like, you know, is this John Flynn's Rolling Thunder, or is this Steven Seagal's cartoon mystical action film?
Yeah, right. He does cut somebody's arm off with a machete in this one. There's a lot of shit like hitting people with cleavers and shit like that.
That's something I noticed about Seagal too, was that in his films, like it's in a lot of the action movies and stuff, but he does make them pretty like brutal. There's a lot of bone breaking, and there's a lot of really good squib work. And also, characters say "fuck" a lot more than in other action movies. I find like "fucking" is that word is in like every other dialogue. It seems, which I did notice.
This is a movie for big boys, Jamie.
That's right, and that's the big boy word.
I completely agree with what you were saying, Jamie, about like it's something about the sincerity of Seagal.
Yeah,
where again, like we said, the thing that is fascinating to me about him is that he believes that this is like the epitome of cool and tough and masculine and everything, you know? And so watching somebody give that over so sincerely, it has this strange sort of captivating element to it. It makes me think of like, I've been watching like, I watched the Karate Kid movies again recently, like the original ones. John G. Avildsen movies, the director of Rocky,
Yeah.
And like something that I'm always really struck by with Ralph Macchio in the movies that he's in as a teen, like The Karate Kid and Crossroads and stuff like that, is that I always thought he was really good at playing characters like as a teen who were charismatic and likable and you wanted to root for them and stuff. But they were also like sometimes quite prickly and would do like quite, could really just be kind of an arsehole sometimes.
Definitely. Yeah.
And something about that sort of thing done well, I think really makes a character for me. Makes me think of like early Tom Cruise stuff. And things like Rain Man and Risky Business and stuff, where he's kind of a piece of shit like half the time. But, and that does make for me anyway, makes for a captivating performance because there is like a sincerity to it in a character as opposed to just, watching something where the character that you're supposed to root for is just a good person through and through,
Right, yeah.
Whereas with Seagal, it's like he has the sincerity of the prickly kind of arsehole thing, but he can't pull off anything else. He can't pull off like warm or funny.
Like there's moments where he's trying to comfort
or
Sharon Stone, like when she's crying, and there's one hilarious part where he's about to go with the cops again because I think they're taking him in for questioning or whatever, and he just completely stoically just taps her lightly on the back and says, "Okay, honey, I'll be back," and she's just crying with the baby in her arms and all that, and he's just like tap tap tap, all right, and then
he's
leaves
just looking
scene.
bored.
Yeah, like there's just he is incapable of doing anything other than just being that badass beat 'em up guy. And it's hilarious that he always still gets into these films where he has a relationship of sorts, and there are scenes where he has to kind of be the loving husband or something like that. He never quite pulls it off.
Well, that was why I thought Hard to Kill was so funny because they eliminated that by just literally massacring his family.
Yeah, but then he still ends up having that like sex scene in the dojo or whatever. So.
True.
I know. I was like, yeah, you've been in a coma for a while, but as far as you're concerned, this happened like a week ago.
Yeah, right.
You're already fucking this lady.
Yeah. Oh my god,
man! That and as you were talking about, I think before we started, that stringy like beard that he gets while he's in the coma for 7 years.
But that's the thing. Like in this movie, he's an Italian immigrant, and in the next movie, I think he declares himself an entirely different ethnicity. In Hard to Kill, I swear to God, he goes into a coma and grows a Chinese beard. It is. He absolutely has like a Fu Manchu mustache.
Yes.
Long goatee, nothing on the sides.
I do love how often he brings up that he's Italian in this movie, and he writes every person that he fights with to essentially like be like racist towards him.
Italian,
Yeah.
So, some dude calls him like a fucking Italian puke.
That's true. Everybody throughout this movie is like, this Italian piece of shit. Does seem like everybody else in the movie is also Italian, but I guess that's not really the point.
Everyone else in the movie is like actually Italian, and it's just a bunch of Italian men telling Seagal that he's a terrible person for being Italian.
Yeah,
but there's another aspect to this, of course, which is that he's also included in his own character's story here an element which I think came more to the fore in Out for Justice, which was the yes, I'm a street smart tough cop who's on the right side of the law. And also, I grew up with the mafia, and I'm friends with all of them, and they respect me.
Where do you find the time, Seagal?
Yeah. Somehow, he's on the right side of everything, and everyone thinks he's cool. And there's that element to this as well, where like he's having like a cookout at his house. And and there's all the cops there.
Mobsters and cops are both coming and being like, "Great baptism."
Yeah, that was it. For some
only
reason,
Seagal can bring them together.
And they just like stand across from each other at the barbecue, being like, "You stupid pig," and they're like, "Fuck you, greaseball."
But this hot dog's good, so I'm not going to do anything about it right now.
Yeah, they both just kind of go, these guys. Well, we gotta be cool for our friend Steven Seagal.
That's right.
We keep it together. You don't want him to get mad.
And very loosely, if I remember correctly, he finds out that a local Italian gangster is doing drug trafficking with the CIA torture expert. He finds himself in a conspiracy because he finds like federal level C4 weapon shipment coming in.
Yeah,
and I love too when he grabs it and he's just like, "That's C4, my man. I know it. I've smelt it. I've dealt with it. I know what it looks like."
Expert in all fields.
I used this a lot when I was in the CIA, but don't tell anyone. They think because he's a vice cop, they think that they're busting these guys importing drugs in an engine block, and then when they get there and sees the engine block, they find out that it's full of C4. He immediately identifies it due to his shady past. And that's when we reintroduce the CIA element to the movie. Because the drug dealers, they all get arrested and are immediately released by the FBI. It's the FBI, I think, that tells them these guys are not to be touched, you know? Mm-hmm. And he's like, what? No one's above the law.
No one's above
so this
my
says it
law.
like 4 times in the movie. Yeah.
He does. And so I guess as there's 2 parallel elements at this point, because he also swings by the church where he's tracking these drug dealers with Pam Grier, and he swings by the church, and the priest there wants to talk to him, and he's like, "Hey, you know how you're the man that everyone in the world trusts?"
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I do. I know it.
Check out these Central American political refugees who are hanging out in the basement.
And he's like, "Cool, I like you guys."
Yeah, it's just like, hey, illegal immigrants, here's my friend, Detective Detective Seagal, and they all go, "Hey, what's up?" And he goes, "Hi, illegal immigrants. Anyway, I gotta go, Father." He's like, hey, you should come back to confession." He's like, "Ha." And then he just
he says, "I'm a married man. I got no sins." And the cop says, "You're a cop. You have sins."
Yeah.
Which is fair. Which is totally fair. So they introduce this plot point of the political refugees and the priest, and also
you're right though. It is very like sudden and just very like there's no reason this priest should be doing this, but that's how they have to get that information to Seagal, because shortly afterwards Seagal sees the gangster that he caught in that car chase that I was describing earlier. He was choking the gangster, and that was where they found the shipment of C4 and everything. But the gangster actually gets put back out on the street by the FBI. And that's when he assumes that this goes all the way to the top. That they let him out, even though they knew that he was getting a C4 shipment. And there's a lot of him like just doing like pissing contests with the FBI guy in like the offices and stuff. They even get that great moment where they were like, "You're a loose cannon. You've gone too far. You got to turn your badge and your gun in.
Yep.
You're officially suspended for doing unauthorized surveillance and illegal wiretaps and unlawful entry and all of these things."
All those things we repeatedly asked you to stop doing.
Yes, and that they didn't even include the brutality of him just beating up everyone.
They never mentioned that for some reason.
He's not being suspended for the 4 scenes of police brutality we've seen him do at this point.
God, all of those scenes, like, because I feel like I often mistake these 2 scenes because they're so alike. The scene in this one where he is looking for, I think, his own cousin. Yes. He's at his baptism, and he's like, "Where's my cousin or niece or whatever?" And they're like,
"Yeah, I think it might be his niece, because he's talking to his grandma or his mom, I think, and she says it's to the granddaughter or something like that." But yeah, he breaks into that bar and he's like, "I'm looking for this girl," and everyone's like, "Never seen her," and then he just starts like breaking fingers, and they're all like, "She's upstairs."
Yeah.
So the scene is basically identical to one in Out for Justice, where he just, anyone seen Bobby Lupo? No? I guess I'll beat the fuck out of everybody in the bar.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same thing here, where he goes in and he just starts fucking hassling people until they're like, could you fuck off? And he's like, oh, it's on now.
Do you know what my absolute favorite, and it's related to exactly the point that you're making, my favorite Seagal-ism that kills me every time I see it now is he walks into a space. The people who own the space say, please leave.
Because they know.
This is my business.
Like,
this is my business.
No.
Please don't start a fight in here.
Yeah.
Because I know that whatever fight you get into, you don't just punch them and knock them out. You break them through my table. You break them through my windows. Just don't start anything. And there's one that happens in here in a convenience store.
Yes.
Where he has a literal Italian gangster hit squad pulls up. There's like 4 or 5 of them with machine guns who all shoot at him, and they all unload their entire clips
miss,
because they're amateurs. They all miss. Steven Seagal then gets the drop on them by holding one pistol at 5 dudes all holding automatic weapons.
Yep.
And they all go, okay, this guy's tough, he's cool, we're going to drop the gun. And instead of restraining them outside, he walks them all into a convenience store.
And just before that, one of my favorite parts is all of the guns are down from these goons now. He has them at with his pistol out, and one of the guys who has his gun down just insults him. Like he just says something like kind of offensive to Seagal, and Seagal just point blank shoots him in the chest in the middle of the street.
No, he says, I do like the line for, again, just the sheer brutality of it. He has all 5 of them there, and they all have their guns down, and one of them says, come on, fellas, he can't get all of us. And he just immediately shoots him in the heart.
Executes that man, yeah.
and says in what seems to be an 80-yard in line from behind, but I'll get an A for effort. Which is not that cool a thing to say when you've just murdered somebody in front of a group of people.
And it's in the middle of, it's broad daylight in the middle of the street. All the public is watching him do this. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And then, leading into the convenience store.
I was going to say, so he executes that guy. Now there's only 4 remaining. He's already beat them. All he has to do is literally restrain them or call backup or whatever. But he walks them into a convenience store where the guy is like, don't come in here, don't come in here. Like he's literally shouting him to be like, don't take these men in here. And he says, don't worry, it's police business. And then he continues to just break the entire man's shop with the bodies of the hit squad. He throws a dude into, sort of where all the drinks are held.
Dude, it's he chooses a fresh shelf every single time and just goes, oh, that shelf hasn't been destroyed yet. Throws a guy into there, throws a guy into the freezer. He just makes sure that every single thing in that shop has been destroyed. And there's also this incredible shot of the storekeeper that is just, as soon as Seagal starts fighting and smashes the first shelf, it's just a stoic shot of the shopkeeper just kind of like, fuck. It's just, he's just so disappointed. And I love that Davis actually put that in the movie where he was like, we're actually going to have the storekeeper react to Seagal's horrible physical things that he's doing. Very funny.
Initially he does a Macaulay Culkin hands to the side of his head thing. And then from that point on, he's just like, oh, I know how this goes.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's the weird thing too, is that this was a coordinated assassination of him, and he doesn't even get that angry about it. He just he's just you guys come into this shop. Oh, you guys are gonna fight back. Okay, I'm gonna use you to destroy this shop. Now you're all unconscious, and now I'm gonna leave.
Yep.
And that's
another
that's
day
the
at
end.
the office.
Yeah, to Seagal, he never, his heart rate just never goes up at all in any of this, despite the fact that, he's found himself in a insane situation where people who, he used to consider friends and just suspended him and everything like that, are now, part of a conspiracy to literally like murder him and his family. And Seagal just doesn't have him in it to, get to that point where he's just like, this is making me very angry. Instead, after that scene, that's where he tries to just go and live with his family.
Yeah.
Like he just almost got assassinated, and he's not like, okay, this means this is real business now. I got to like finish this up. Like at any other movie version of this, that would be the part where he like hides his family somewhere and like goes into the basement where he has a militia grade arms supply, and he's like, I gotta go above the law now or something. But no, he literally just sits at his family dinner table and is like, not really much that I can do. There's some sort of conspiracy about like human rights violations in Central America and refugees and a CIA torture expert shipping in C4. Don't really know what all that is, but it's cool. I'm just gonna chill out. At one point, I think the only other fight scene he gets into during that time is it's the bit where he's fighting the dudes on the street who just like insult him.
Oh yeah,
they just like sort of mildly annoy him, so he starts like beating the shit out of them. And then the other one says something about like, good job, brother, or
yeah, I think it's like two he goes up to two black guys after and he passes them and he's like, what's up, brothers, or something like that. Yeah. It's such a Seagal moment.
Yep, we're all extremely cool with each other.
Exactly.
We have an innate respect for you, sir. So yeah, I guess the way that the rest of this movie pans out is him then tying the thread together that very conveniently. I guess at this point, once the assassination has happened, he then receives a phone call from his friend who recruited him into the CIA at the start of the movie.
Oh, I love Sharon Stone's. Why is the CIA calling you at 2 a.m.? And he's just like, because I'm a cool guy.
It is what
you know
it
how the
is,
CIA is, baby. Yeah. And this guy says, hey, it turns out that the person who's running all of this and trying to kill you is the evil villain, Henry Silva, from the first 2 minutes of the movie. What a coincidence.
Oh, no.
The guy you had a disagreement with in the intro.
Yep.
About the morality of violence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the rest of it basically pans out as him resolving the threat of this crime. But also, like we said when we started talking about this is kind of the only movie where like Seagal gets caught.
Yeah.
He gets captured by these
however
dudes and
briefly.
they get him.
Yeah, he does get that crazy set piece though before he gets caught, where he's like driving the car in the underground parking, and he literally like runs over a dude and then drives through a wall, and that dude flies through the concrete wall and hits the third rail on the subway platform down below and like electrocutes to death and shit like that. Yeah. There's also a great shot of the car, half the car like hanging outside the underground park. I mean, I guess it's not underground, it's above.
Yeah,
but like it looks like an underground parking area. And that shot of even the car with the wheels spinning, like hanging half off and stuff. Like there's some decent little action beats and little shootouts with like some pretty filthy squib work. Not as good as On Deadly Ground squib work, I'll say, but when people get shot, there's a visceral impact to it in the shootouts in this.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's it's the drug dealer from the start of the movie that he slams out of the back of his Dragula. So yeah, he actually gets captured and he's like tied up to a chair and surrounded by dudes with shotguns and all that sort of stuff. And and he's actually it's like the only time in his career that he actually looks a bit beaten up. Other than like in Machete, where he played a villain for the only time ever and gets killed.
Yeah. Although I will say there is this hilarious twist, because you are right. This is a scene where the dramatic function of the scene is that he is being tortured, he is being captured, he is being he does bleed, like the guy breaks his nose and shit like that, and then they drug him so that they can so that he can't fight back and they can fight him even more. But the twist of this scene is that he's faking it. to make them think that he's been beaten and he's been, that he's in a vulnerable position, so that when they eventually, for some reason, they decide that, okay, we're going to let our guard down because now that he's drugged, he can't fight us anymore. They let their guard down for 1 second, and he just like breaks out of the fucking chains.
I love that his line. I think his
chair.
line before he breaks out too, and I can't remember exactly what he's responding to, but he says, "You are too fucking dumb, you asshole," and then like kicks him in the balls or something.
He just tears the arm entirely off the chair, I'm pretty sure. Oh, yeah. And then just murders everybody.
Yep.
Yep.
However, he does the thing that leads him into this is getting double crossed by his old CIA buddy, and he gets to.
He gets the big monologue, right?
He gets his big monologue. I actually have it here if anybody would like to hear it.
I would. I mean, I definitely was like, damn, he just said CIA agents should be tried like Nazi war criminals. I was like, damn, Seagal.
He was like, they wiped out entire cultures. I'm like, shit, Seagal, you're going off.
Go off.
That's it. All right, here it is. The movie has built entirely towards Seagal's little monologue here.
Yeah, which is Seagal looking into the camera and being like, exactly what Andrew's about to read.
Yeah. When I was in the CIA, yeah. Here it is. So he says to his old buddy, "You know something? In Europe, they're trying some 80-year-old camp guard for Nazi war crimes. All around our country, they got guys on death row for murdering 1, 2, 3 guys, and they probably deserve what they're going to get. But you and I, we know people that are personally responsible for the death of 50,000 non-military personnel. Librarians, teachers, doctors, women, children, all dead. We've wiped out entire cultures. Damn. And for what? Not one CIA agent has ever been tried, much less accused of any crimes. You guys think you're above the law, but you ain't above mine."
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man,
That is
I got
such a wild line to say. Not a single CIA agent has ever been accused and tried of a crime in America, because I'm sure that's true.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting moment that, like, again, as I kind of mentioned in the introduction, that like Deep Cover, I think, is a movie that is very much interested in the exact same idea. This was something that came up in the late 80s, early 90s. People were, finally, coming to, I mean, a lot of sort of American artists and public were kind of, wrestling with this idea. And it's just so interesting that like Deep Cover is a version of the movie that like it based its entire sort of dramatic structure around that reveal, to the point where you feel like Lawrence Fishburne's like pain when he has that realization, versus this just kind of comes up near the end and he just gets to kind of like finger wag the other guy in the CIA. Like, that's the dramatic function, is that like he's like, you know what, you used to be my friend. Well, guess what, my friend, you and that other guy and me, we did crimes once.
Yeah.
Well, and that's and again, this is a weird hallmark of his character that will be repeated in the following movie, is a person who participated in all of the things that he is criticizing other people for doing.
And now saying that they should be tried and put into prison, but he's the one that's going to do it. It's weird to have this, like, he seems to have this, he wants to have all like the quote unquote cool attributes that come with being like a CIA agent. But then in this ending, he wants to also completely criticize them, but without being a part of it. But he also wants you to know that he was a part of it, but in the better ways, I guess. Like, it's so strange.
And he was a cool guy by being a part of it.
Right. And now that he recognizes that he slaughtered, 50,000 to 100,000 people or whatever, but he recognizes it, so he's cool now, he's good, and he's going to help better the world.
That's right.
It's
by doing various police brutality.
Yeah, it's true Galaxy Brain shit. It's amazing.
But he recognized that he has done that, and he's holding himself responsible, and that's doing a growth. So,
right, exactly.
Yeah,
but
so
he won't be tried,
to
but
him.
everyone else will be.
Yeah, so he
Yeah,
just
he's now gonna kick the CIA torture expert in the nuts, shotgun his various goons. He does get a really brutal kill on him where he breaks his arm and then snaps his neck.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
and then I guess the movie ends with him just again. He's like, "Got to get home, got to get home to my wife."
And doesn't he say that he ends up revealing all the CIA secrets or whatever to the government?
Yeah, he ends up blowing the whistle on CIA war crimes is like the end of the movie where they have him in the hospital after he walked into the hotel covered in blood, almost unconscious.
Yeah.
And the senator saw him, the guy who's like federal protection was like trying to prevent Seagal whole movie.
And then there's like a photo of like Washington DC or something, and he says something like it's like, as long as politicians have connections with lawmakers and criminals, they can always remain above the law.
Yeah.
Credits, baby.
That's it. Yeah. So this was Steven Seagal saying destroying the CIA and exposing Iran-Contra by essentially just destroying various Chicago businesses and public spaces.
Yeah. It's so... when you
Take
really
that,
analyze
CIA.
like who he fights the majority of the time in this, it's very funny.
And yeah, so
Thank you, Steven.
This would go on to be such a sort of repeatable pattern for him.
Yeah.
Is a character of nondescript origins or whatever ethnicity he has picked, with some kind of mysterious background that makes him the most superior combatant in the world. He has also participated in all of the crimes that he is accusing other people of, except he's better than them somehow. He gets to finger wag and moralize throughout the movie and not take any damage for the whole thing. And that became the Steven Seagal template.
Yep.
Which we are going to. I mean, we're gonna talk about very much again when we move on to On Deadly Ground next year. But for the reductive rating round on Above the Law, which I think we covered pretty well. We went pretty long there. But yeah, I mean, shit. I mean, I think for me, he kind of does have at the moment anyway. I mean, I haven't gotten into some of the ones that people kind of like less, but at the moment, Steven Seagal, because of this the sort of surreal quality of what he gets involved in the writing room on these movies, they kind of have a floor of like a 3 out of 5 for me right now.
Yeah.
Where I just have a blast, and that's what Above the Law is gonna get for me. I do think that I'd have to watch Hard to Kill again. I think I might have slightly preferred this to Hard to Kill a little bit, but I'd have to go back and rewatch it and see. But basically, for all the reasons that we've said already, that this is a very strange movie with a very like good idea for a movie that Seagal has to incorporate every single element that he thinks personally is cool in order to get the point across. And it probably doesn't get it across as well as it could have, but you know what? I'll
part
give
of why
it to
we
him.
like it.
I was very entertained start to finish on this one, so 3 out of 5 for sure.
Yeah, I'm the same way, 3 out of 5. I think right now I slightly prefer Hard to Kill, but that just could be because I've seen it twice, and so I just remember more. I did find that like there are plenty of amazing parts in this movie, but I did find that the downtime when they were just talking about the case was quite just boring and generic. That's to be slightly expected with a Seagal film, but I just found it was more noticeable a little bit in this one for me. That being said, though, there's still plenty of the awesome Seagalisms. He's still destroying convenience stores to try to get questions, or just based on revenge, actually, in this case. I love his endless contradictions of I'm going to be the hero, but also I was a part of these CIA operatives that killed thousands of people, but then I'm going to have the CIA
I'm going to moralize you on violence, and then I'm going to do a police brutality every 10 minutes.
he is a walking contradiction of a man that has he has such sincerity and,
that everyone loves and respects, of course.
Yes, of course, and he speaks every language that that's ever been invented. He knows all cultures. He's one with all cultures. He seems to be like every ethnicity in the book somehow. It's unbelievable. It's very, very fun, very stupid, but very fun. And so, 3 out of 5
for you, Andrew.
I think same for me. 3 out of 5. It's enjoyable. However, I share Roger Ebert's criticism, if you can call it that, which was he said they've tried to stuff about 50% too much plot into this movie.
There is a lot.
Yeah,
of
I
plot.
agree with that. That's really what I was saying, where it bogs it down a little bit.
Yeah, and that's why I think I think you can really draw like a very clear sort of line over time between this movie and then Out for Justice and then Hard to Kill, where like by the Hard to Kill point, there's a lot of very sort of like campy stuff to enjoy about it. I think the funny beard, the shots of Kelly LeBrock looking at him and going, oh, Mason Storm.
Yeah,
checking him, checking him in his coma under his sheets and being like, "Wow, that's a big dick."
At one point, he's even like he's meditating with those like needles in his skin and stuff like that. Like it's it's got some good stuff.
A lot of fun stuff in there. Whereas I think Out for Justice is like the perfect midpoint between those two movies because it has him just like doing all of his swaggering, I'm extremely Italian and the mafia respects me, but I'm also a CIA super black belt bullshit. Him just running around, violating everybody's rights, abusing the fuck out of everyone, acting like it's cool
and John Flynn of Rolling Thunder. I mean, obviously that movie with Devane and Tommy Lee Jones has like this incredible revenge climax where they are just like shotgunning like a brothel in all of their sort of post-Vietnam craze and pain, and they try to recreate that in Out for Justice, and you just don't feel it on a character level. But man,
that was because of Seagal.
Yeah, John Flynn could direct the hell out of a dude breaking into a place with a shotgun and just eviscerating the bodies inside of it. So Out for Justice has a way more impactful like climactic action set piece.
Yeah, whereas this movie, I think it's trying to do a little too much by trying to give us the full spectrum of like how Steven Seagal sees himself. Which is probably a challenge that was never going to be met by any one movie. But so I think like there are other movies of his that to me are a bit more fun, but I think that this is still very important because it's the debut with all the Hollywood firepower behind it, and it really sets the template for what his whole cinematic run of movies would be about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
This is Steven Seagal auteur. This is like the homework lesson. If you watch this, you will know exactly what the structure is going to be for about 10 years at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, that being said, I think that's going to wrap it up for Above the Law here. We're going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about On Deadly Ground.
And this corporation
Find me a body or find me the man.
has a big problem.
I mean, who the hell is this guy?
I'd say he's company.
Company?
CIA.
Whatever he is, he's a damn problem. Steven Seagal.
Time to move out.
Michael Caine.
He'd need a miracle to stop us now.
Just gonna reach out and touch somebody here.
On Deadly Ground.
All right, we are back, and we are talking On Deadly Ground, the 1994 American action-adventure film directed, co-produced, and starring Steven Seagal. His one and only directorial outing. He somehow got a who's who of a supporting cast as well, including Michael Caine, R. Lee Ermey from Full Metal Jacket. Billy Bob Thornton shows up in there for like a second.
With John C. McGinley.
Who am I missing? Michael J. White is in there very briefly as one of the oil workers.
Joan Chen. is in here.
Yep.
John C. McGinley
from Twin
is in
Peaks.
here.
Yep. Oh my god.
What's his name? Thorson, the dude who's Arnold Schwarzenegger's friend. He's in fucking every movie from this. Sven-Ole Thorson is like the big bodyguard dude. But he's an actor who was like he was Arnold Schwarzenegger's friend during his bodybuilding years. So So he just got him roles in everything.
Does he play the guard in The Mask?
That's a good friend.
He's the mole cop in Mallrats who wears the straw boater.
Okay.
You know that guy?
Yeah, I think I have
Man,
the
this
image.
guy was in like every Arnold movie I'm looking at. Yeah, we've talked about a lot of movies that he's been in. He's been in Predator, Last Action Hero, Running Man, Conan, Raw Deal.
But then he also just turned up in like, just action movies forever. Red Heat,
Yeah, he's
13th
here in,
Warrior,
like, The Hunt for Red October, Lethal Weapon.
And
that
who's the
classic
guy?
Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
There's a guy too. He does more comedic roles now. He's in Office Space briefly. He plays one of the like head CEO guys or something.
No, he's one of the Bobs. He's one of the HR guys.
Oh, right.
He's very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, he plays this
Bob.
like goon in this, which I thought was interesting.
That's John C. McGinley, who most people would probably know from Scrubs.
Yeah.
Dr. Cox, is it? Or
I also
funny
remember
actor.
him in Point Break as well. Point Break, and I think he was in a lot of Oliver Stone stuff too.
Okay.
Like Platoon,
JFK
and like Born on the 4th of July.
Yeah. I definitely recognized
Wall
a ton
Street.
of people in this, which was surprising.
Yeah, I mean, he really got a crew together, and this was like a pretty expensive movie. I'm pretty sure it was like $50 million. Like this was like a.
Oh wow.
I mean, it ended up, I think, bombing. I think it ended up making something like $30 million, and
it did not get its money back.
Yeah, like this was after a string of box office successes. This is one of the biggest bombs of his career, as well as
That's so weird.
very negative reviews, I guess, probably to some of, once again, he takes a basic idea that, I think a lot of people would agree with, but he does like to do this very moralizing, finger-wagging kind of tone that he kind of takes on it. Yeah. And in this one, Steven Seagal wants you to know how much he cares about the environment.
Right.
Someone tweeted at us that when we were saying we were going to do this movie, that Steven Seagal waddled so that Al Gore could run. It was kind of like the idea of the film here.
The other thing that's noteworthy, I guess, is that this is around the point, like Under Siege and this, where you know how we were talking on Above the Law about like what people were kind of seeing in him, and I think that you can kind of see in his first couple of movies, you can kind of see like why somebody would think he was handsome, like whether or not you're thinking of it as a conventional handsomeness. He's still like a kind of tall, in shape dude with like
he's got that stare.
He's got a jawline, all that kind of stuff. But the Under Siege on Deadly Ground point is where he started to thicken out into his future form, I think.
Yeah, which is now where he makes direct to video like mega action movies where he like
and,
sits
refuses
in a chair
to
for
stand.
90%. Yeah.
So you know how we were saying that he was a whole bunch of things in the previous movie, The Italian Immigrant, the Vietnam veteran.
Yep. Right.
And in this one, I think, is he Native American in this movie?
I think so. It's hard to say.
It is so unclear.
Yeah,
it's so unclear.
Because he seems like he definitely throughout the film is always standing up for the Native Americans that are being fucked with or whatever, and he seems to like hint through dialogue that he has some background, but I don't think he ever outright says it or anything like that. It's very strange.
It's one of those things where like he very clearly he has a respect for the culture, and I was wondering too when he when the film does open with like the opening shots of like the Alaskan vistas of trees and mountains and like one eagle soaring through it, and Seagal comes in like an eagle on a fucking helicopter being brought into this oil rig, and he's got like his crocodile skin
and they
boots
do
and
this
his deerskin
amazing
jacket.
foot to head shot where to reveal him, where it's his back, and then right when it gets to his head, he turns around and it's just like, there's Seagal, baby, the star. It's
and
it's
he's
incredible.
like an oil drilling related fire expert, and all the oil
Also
all
CIA,
the oil
though.
rig workers go, oh, thank God, the environment whisperer is here. It's like what they're all saying, like when he shows up, and his name is Forrest.
Yes,
Forrest.
He also
Tapp,
wears like this like Western, like different variations of a Western kind of coat with the, I don't know what you call them. They're like these like
fringing.
Yes.
Fringing.
Yes.
Except that often it also is like has, I don't know, I guess like indigenous beading and stuff on it.
Yeah,
it definitely
does.
that's
Clearly,
just
it's clearly meant to be like, he wears coats like that in other movies, like Fire Down Below. He just inexplicably has like a sort of knee-length suede, like Native American jacket kind of thing. But yeah, like in this, given the context, it definitely comes across that way. But like you were saying, compared to his other movies, where I feel like there's a lot of kind of dubbing in of lines where, other characters or people in the bars where he's beating the shit out of everybody, saying like, hey, get that guy, or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
In this movie that he directed, all of the ADR shit of like people who are like
it's
customers
so
or
good.
bystanders are all them going, what a badass. I'm so happy he's here.
Dude, my favorite
so
one,
cool.
there's this amazing one that I actually rewound because I thought it was one of the best deliveries I've ever heard of, just like 2 lines. And he gets up, and it's when that one guy in the bar is fucking with the Native American dude, and he gets up for the first time, and everybody in the whole crowd just starts going, oh my God, he's getting up. What are we going to do? And this one dude, that's just in the background, you can't see his face, you can't see him say it or anything, he just goes, holy fuck. And it's like, it just made me laugh so hard because it's so distinct and like isolated from every other ADR thing, and it's just it's amazing. It's very funny.
It's so
dude,
great.
that collective gasp when the guy who is like bullying this indigenous man, and he's like calling him gay and like doing some racist shit, trying to get him to like drink the beer and stuff like that. And when he says to Seagal, hey, Cupcake, what you looking at? And the whole crowd just goes,
you just fucked with Seagal. You fucked with Forrest.
Why would you say? They were like, he's got the deerskin jacket ponytail combo. Why would you say that to him?
It's a deadly combination, man. You don't want to fuck with that guy.
And by the way, this scene is also the bartender going, Forrest, don't do anything to my bar.
And when the fight breaks out, there's even a shot of her going like, God damn it.
But yeah, they do have that beautiful moment when he arrives at the oil rig and the fire's happening, where he shows up, steps out of the chopper, and a cheer goes up from the crew.
Yes.
Like, people literally cheer that he's arrived.
Yes.
Incredible.
They're like, awesome, he's going to sort it out now. Michael Caine is there. We are introduced to his villainous oil baron, who is theoretically for the first 2 minutes of the movie meant to be American.
I think so. It's weird. It's definitely this weird thing where he's meant to be the owner of an American company, but he just doesn't do the accent after a while.
It's
Michael
so
Caine
clearly
stopped
comes
giving a
across.
fuck for sure.
It absolutely comes off like he just said, I cannot be fucked doing this accent anymore at some point in the making of the movie. It really just comes in and out, scene to scene.
Yeah.
But but also, dude, he is like a cartoon
Like,
Oh, yeah.
guy
Oh, yeah.
who runs an oil company who is absolutely evil, who is the most racist person you've ever heard, like being like, I just want to like kill these Eskimos and shit. Like that's the kind of stuff that he says in this movie. It's brutal.
Yeah.
And then by the way, I don't think I've ever laughed as hard. Michael Caine should have done more comedy, in my opinion, because it was one of the greatest moments was very early on. And it signaled to me that, is this what this movie is? Was when he goes, Aegis Oil, we protect your national treasures. We keep them safe for future generations. The planet is our home too. Who cares? We do. And he's doing like that. Do you guys remember when that BP oil guy, made the big apology about the spill? He's doing that exact voice. And then immediately the cameras turn off and he's like petting the deers or moose. I can't remember exactly what they are. And he goes, fuck these animals, get me a goddamn washcloth. Like right after.
Yeah, so that's definitely the tone that Seagal is striking, which I respected that a bit, because there are like, you know, subtle jokes in his other movies, but that was a straight up like satirical moment, which I found surprising, honestly, coming from Seagal. Yeah,
there was a good sense of timing to it. It kind of shocked me when Michael Caine just like flipped on a dime like that.
Yeah. And speaking of like just funny moments, and one of the first lines that Seagal gets is, for $350,000, I'd fuck anything once. Like just shit like that. It's like one of the opening lines, so you know what you're in store for right away.
That's just a progressive king.
Exactly.
In that scene where they're shooting the PSA for the villainous Aegis Oil Company, the on-set director of the commercial is a cameo from Irvin Kershner.
Do you know what? I saw him in the credits, and I didn't realize that was what he was.
That was him explaining the commercial to Michael Caine, and then just rolling his eyes as Michael Caine tells him to fuck off. He's like, he says, I know. Again, he's meant to be American. He's like, I know what I'm doing. You got any other thoughts? Keep them to your fucking self. And it's like, thank you, American oil baron. He is essentially playing Montgomery Burns in this movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And just briefly speaking of that intro scene again with Seagal, when he ends up blowing up the rig or whatever he does to contain whatever he's doing.
It's the coolest thing.
Oh, it's a great shot. I could not fucking believe it. I'm like, Seagal, man, you kind of have a vision here. He explodes it, and it's just a fucking image of Seagal like basically looking at the camera, and the entire background is the explosion. You see nothing else. It's just fire and Seagal. And
gigantic wall of fire.
Yeah, I loved it. I was like, that is so, like, only Steven Seagal could actually direct Steven Seagal. He knew that, and he's bringing it.
So the thing they're telling us very early in the movie here, in this scene, the old timer comes out and says, there's something funny going on at the plant that's causing these fires. I think it's some shady
they're
business.
Using like what's the tool that that's going on? They're using like defective blowout preventers, like intentionally, and he's saying that
some sort of regulators.
These fires are starting because they're using bad materials to speed up the process of building these refineries, because if they don't get the refineries like up and online, you know, in like 10 days, the rights to the land is going to revert back to the natives, and obviously they can't have that happen. So that presumably the reason these, you know, sort of accidents are taking place is because they're using shitty sped up you know, tools and materials, essentially.
Yeah. So we set up everything in the first couple of scenes here, right, that we expect from Seagal.
You got the evil oil baron. You got the premise for why this is going wrong. You got the living environment whisperer / explosions expert who's there to show up, who also is just the coolest guy at the bar that everyone thinks is awesome, except
everyone
for the one guy.
Him.
Yeah, and what's incredible too about the bar scene is that eventually, because once again, you know, he thinks that he's a you know, an Arnold or a Stallone, and that, you know, this is what that scene looks like. It's so fucking cool. But ultimately, you can see how it changes when Seagal gets full control. And the version of this scene is him playing the slap hands game with the guy.
It is well. Hold
Yep.
up, because like you said, it starts with there is a native guy in the bar. He's being abused by some of these oil rig workers, which I was kind of under the impression Seagal was one of, due to them showing us his job like 2 minutes before this. They're
Maybe he
abusing.
rides in the helicopter with the CEO to the explosion site. So.
Yep. So this guy eggs Seagal on and keeps abusing this native man over and over until he finally steps in, and like you said, the bartender / owner says, "Forrest, don't you break any of my shit and have a fight in here." And Forrest immediately makes a mental note that he must destroy every possible surface in the bar. Because
the jukebox, the tables, the windows, they're gone.
He one-man wrecking crews all of these oil rig workers, including like several 65-year-old men. One dude comes up and he's like, "Don't fuck with the oil workers, pal," and he just immediately puts his face through a jukebox or whatever. Just some fucking old white-haired guy.
Yeah, while saying natives 8, oil workers 0.
Yeah, so there were a few issues. There were a few issues there. Like the first one is that now we're remembering that he directed this, right?
Yeah,
and we're getting full bore Seagal. He immediately is fucking all these dudes up, but also he's throwing them through windows. He's throwing them through the jukebox. He's smashing every table in the joint. He's tearing the place apart, right? And in between,
flat palm chopping at people's necks and balls.
Yep. Breaks like a 70-year-old's leg.
but he keeps cutting back to the owner of the bar, who's going, "Oh God damn it!" about every new thing that he breaks.
Yeah.
And again, I have to ask myself: is that funny to him, or is it?
This is funny. Yes,
I think this is funny.
A bit.
Yeah.
It's funny that Forrest comes in and they're like, "Oh no, he's constantly beating the fuck out of people in the bar and also destroying the bar while he does it, to the extent that when he stands up to walk across the room, we all say, 'Please don't destroy the whole bar again.'" And of course, he destroys the whole bar.
And I love how we've seen this like in just the different contexts.
4
the
movies.
opposite
We've
context.
seen it in 4 movies at this point.
And in every other movie, like, people are obviously upset, but it's not played as this like satirical thing where I love that the moment that Seagal gets his hands on it, he's like, "Well, I'm going to make this a comedic beat because I'm not a bad guy. I just like beating people up in public spaces. That's all."
Because the way that the bartender treats it, the way that it's treated in the editing of like it cuts back to her being like, "Oh, that
like
Forrest." Yeah.
Yeah. It's like physical comedy. It's fucking hilarious when you really think about Seagal's mental state.
It's another thing where he thinks that as part of his reputation, like it's like a quirk.
Yeah, exactly.
Of Forrest.
Exactly. It's a quirk.
So-
He's just a quirky guy.
So he destroys the whole crew, making his way towards the guy who was instigating the whole thing in the first place, veteran character actor Mike Starr, playing the character of Big Mike, he is credited as. And they have him still standing there egging Seagal on throughout the fight. And like you said, Seagal then says, "That's natives 8, oil workers 0." And I'm like, I assume you're counting
He's
yourself.
including himself in the natives camp.
He definitely is.
Yeah.
100%.
I did not read that as Seagal like defending the guy who was
Like,
getting beaten up and saying,
their
"Oh,
honor."
my points count for him." It wasn't that. He's very clearly putting himself in the camp there. And so he then fronts up on Big Mike and is like, time to go. You wanted to be a big boy and have a fight. We're going to play a game. We're going to play the hand slap game.
Here we go, Mr. Big Balls.
Get your big balls out. Yeah, and so he has him hold his hands out, palms up, and he says, if I can slap your hands, I get to hit you, and if you can slap my hands, you get to hit me. And so, of course, his lightning fast reflexes could never be defeated by a fat drunkard. Mm-hmm. So again, this is a situation where he has goaded this person into this position, knowing full well
Into violence.
that it's going to result in him just beating the living fuck out of this dude. He wins all of the slap exchanges and punches this man extremely hard in the stomach, forcing him to writhe around on the ground and puke in front of everybody who go, "Ew, gross." And then on the last one, he slaps his hands again and gives him like a 2-piece and a soda combo, breaking his face open in the course of doing it. And Big Mike stands back up, his face pouring blood. And Seagal says to him, "What does it take? What does it take to change the essence of a man?" Which is quite a turn for this interaction
That's
to
like
take
off
at
of
this
a fucking
point.
perfume commercial or something. That's the funniest shit ever.
And
Oh my god.
and the most
then it turns into this
unlikely
emotional
aspect
thing
of
where
all,
he got to him.
Yeah.
the most unlikely thing of all to happen is that Big Mike says, "I need time. I need time to change." And Seagal goes, "Hey, don't we all?" It's like the most,
Seagal literally beat the racism out of him.
Yeah, dude.
but it's
Oh
again,
my
it's
god.
again, it's perfect Seagal because it involves him doing exactly the thing that he's being critical of his own characters in his own movie of doing, of like
Yep.
beating up on people that are smaller than him or not as strong as him or whatever it might be. And then, getting them to this point where he's just pummeled the living fuck out of them and then been like, "Now let me hit you with a little philosophy." And they go, "Oh, I'll gratefully accept that."
Yeah,
And he gets-
change their entire moral perspective.
Yeah, so he somehow manages to beat
With a
the
game
living
of slap
fuck.
hands.
Yeah, he beats
I mean,
the living fuck out of a room
ultimately-
full of guys, and then
Yep.
he gets to walk away on this air of "Haven't I been magnanimous?" Which is just absurd.
Ultimately, that scene is a perfect microcosm for what this whole movie actually is.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
doing
Absolutely.
that with the issue of environmental pollution. It's the exact same thing. He works for this company. He works for this oil baron, but then he becomes essentially, over the course of the film, an eco-terrorist for the natives. Like it's really incredible. And his version of like a cool masculine guy in this, it no longer reminds me of the 80s action stars. Like with his full hand on it, what it reminds me of more, I don't know if either of you have seen this. Have you guys seen Billy Jack or the Billy Jack movies?
No, I've got Billy Jack, but I watched it.
With Tom Laughlin, and his character served as inspiration for Cliff Booth's character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Okay.
Like that's the kind of sort of like attitude that character kind of has. But mostly he's known for he's got like the denim tuxedo on. He's got the jeans. He's got the jacket. He goes barefoot everywhere, and he wears a Native American hat. And the whole movie is him, this white American action star, like playing a native guy who protects all the counterculture kids who go to the hippie school because they keep getting beat up on by the police and stuff. And he essentially just achieves social progress and change by roundhouse kicking and karate chopping the shit out of people in a denim jacket. And there's lines in that movie like, "Oh my God, watch his feet, man. He can kill you with his feet." And then he'll like barefoot, like roundhouse slap a dude's face off, and he flies like 10 feet in the air and shit like that. But the thing so like obviously a little bit of that sort of like quasi left-leaning white dude who thinks he's a native doing violence on behalf of social progress. Like it has that element to it that Seagal is doing here. But not only that, Laughlin was just as much of an egomaniac, and he ended up directing all 3 Billy Jack films, including the third one, which was The Trial of Billy Jack, and it was a courtroom drama involving Billy Jack, and it was 3 hours long.
Dude, that is next level.
It like in the whole series is just a vanity project of this dude asserting how politically important he is by being the coolest guy doing action in the room. And that's exactly the feeling I got watching this. And I was sitting there going, no other person has wanted to be tried to do Billy Jack, since this dude did it in the 70s, and it immediately jumped this movie in my estimation in the Seagal canon, because I was like, this is just an incredibly singular thing that it takes a special brain, a special amount of power and money, and
Position
to be
in
able
life.
to do something like this. And so I was just like, as soon as I found out that that's what this movie was, I was entirely on board with every stupid thing that happens in it. And no, the stupider it got, the more I liked it.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
It also has like a I think the plot is a lot more streamlined than say Above the Law.
Definitely.
It's probably got
it's even more stylish sometimes. There's stuff in here that's
is.
genuinely beautiful with the location work and stuff.
Yeah, I was surprised at how good Seagal's eye actually was.
Yeah, I think the as far as like the location works and the work and the shots of the mountain ranges and everything, very nice stuff. But,
like later on, there's some really cool matte painting stuff that I found really effective.
He used Walter Hill's cinematographer on this too, the guy who shot Cobra, Long Riders, 48 Hours.
Yeah,
so it's a good looking film. And I mean, like shit of them doing that like chase through the mountains on horseback.
Yeah, and they have
it looks
that
like an old like Western movie
shot where they jump the cliff, and it's completely like a side profile kind of thing.
It had to have been a matte painting thing.
I think
no
so.
way they could have done that.
Yeah, definitely. But it looks. I just loved the image, and then it's kind of cool because they set up like dynamite or some type of trap so that the cliff falls down and the guys can't get over it themselves, like the people chasing them. So like there's some decent action beats for sure.
Yeah, well, and not only is there like we'll get into some of the specifics as we get in here, but like there's a lot of very Rambo First Blood inspired kind of like action where we when we talked about that movie, we talked about how like the way that Stallone is shot, he's almost sometimes like in the forest scenes, he can almost be like a slasher villain. Like he just like pops up and has a trap or kills someone. There's a lot of First Blood inspired stuff happening in this.
There's like a wired shotgun and stuff like that.
Horrifying like squib work and violence, like to the extent that I've never seen in a Seagal. Like he really went unhinged. He was like, I really want to destroy these people's bodies, and you see it all on screen. But in between shots of me becoming one with nature and peace, and like that is the back and forth that takes place in this movie. It's like Seagal is the ultimate badass in the room who is willing to go that extra mile to rip someone's limb off to achieve some sort of balance in the world. Yeah. But then also he is a very spiritual man, and that bit. Like when he gets betrayed and he spends some time in like the native camp in Alaska
and goes on the
like
vision quest.
He goes on a vision
that
quest
was the
where
moment.
He fights a bear,
dude. Bart the bear, hell yeah, star of the Edge.
Well, they this is where I think while the plot also has several things going on, it's a lot more linear than like Above the Law, in that they're not trying to have parallel things going at the same time. They say, he's doing work on the oil rig. He gets told by his old pal that there's something shifty going on. He doesn't really listen to him.
Well, no, he goes and steals the classified floppy disks, right?
And this is also a repeating thread in Seagal movies, is having an old guy character who can be beaten up so that he can be mad about it and take revenge. But then Seagal doesn't have to get beaten up. That's it's the Harry Dean Stanton role in Fire Down Below. And so his
really brutal torture scene where they're just torturing this old man.
Yeah, with like a pipe cutter and shit. They're just smashing up his fingers and
it even looks like
him.
they go near his crotch too at one point, which is like just an added detail of gross.
Well, and there's a great shot where they're twisting the pipe cutter like on his wrist, and blood sprays and hits the window.
Yeah.
And the ending of this scene is a slow push out through that window into the Alaskan vista, where you see the beauty of nature and everything there.
Yeah.
But in the foreground, just out of focus, is the blood sprayed on the window.
Yeah.
So it looks like the blood is like crying out of the mountains and shit. And I was like, Seagal, what is is this visual poetry,
No,
brother?
for real. There's even another part that I was shocked that he came up with this. Was where later on when when he goes to the native camp and he goes through his vision quest and all that, and he befriends them. One of the older guys gets shot because eventually the oil company comes in, and then they act as if they were fighting them, so they shoot one of the guys to like show their dominance.
Yeah, and that guy that Bob from The Office, McKinley, he is just he plays like he's supposed to be the head of Michael Caine's security, but he's just like a weird trigger happy weirdo.
Yeah,
like
he just wants to dish out violence for sure. He's just like torturing people.
But
and
he's also
shooting Native
bad at it.
Americans.
He has a weird tone in his performance where he's trying to be like the psychopathic goon, but that's just not really the kind of characters he usually plays. So it's just a weird thing.
It still
where,
comes off like frantic and kind of not exactly comedic.
Frantic's
but
a good word.
Yeah, for sure. And so when this older native guy passes on, they have this shot of these 3 candles, and they blow out in the wind, and everything goes black. And then there's this fade transition into a black bird that's flying in the next scene, and I was just like, I was kind of blown away that I was watching a Seagal movie with that kind of smooth transition. It was genuinely impressive.
His John C. McGinley's character in this, to me, is much more similar to his character in Highlander 2, where he's like...
I've never seen Highlander.
Me neither, actually.
Any of them, or...
No,
any
that's a
of them.
big
Yeah, we
blind
still haven't
spot
done them
for
yet.
me. Yeah.
We need to watch that.
Oh, because the first one's...
Mulcahy, right?
Yeah. So, and we talked about Razorback on here once, didn't we?
Razorback,
no.
yep.
No,
Yep.
What did we?
Yeah, we did.
And Highlander 2 is also Mulcahy, but it's like an absolutely notorious bomb. It's very, very chopped up and almost incomprehensible plot-wise. But McGinley's in there, and he plays like a almost sort of like corporate bad guy kind of role, which is a bit more like what he's playing in this movie, where he is meant to be a goon, and he is meant to be like a hired gun and everything. But he plays it like, he plays it like a sort of middle management version of somebody who's kind of pissy about having to solve this problem kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I think he's great though. Like I always like McGinley as like villains, and this role kind of reminds me as well. I feel like he was in Surviving the Game, I think, with Ice-T. I want to say.
Okay.
Rutger Hauer, all those guys. One of those The Deadliest Game is Man kind of movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure he was in that as well as just like a toady piece of shit kind of guy like he is in this movie. But yeah, so they torture Forrest's old buddy for these files. They did helpfully drop a line in during the bar scene where he did have a chat to his old pal, and he said, "Hey, is my day pack still up at your place? It has all of my guns and things in it." And he says, yes, it is. It's still in the same spot, the upstairs closet. Like, thank you for saying that out loud for the audience.
That's really great. Yeah, we're gonna need those later for sure.
Yeah. So,
and too, he also drops. Look, he's like, hey, I don't have confidential access, but you do. If you went and like took a look and you saw something about these materials and these faulty blowout preventers and stuff, maybe you could. Maybe you'd find something in there. And then, that's what's on the discs that he eventually gets to his friend who, hides out for him. And they eventually think that, he's that Seagal is actually involved with his friend in doing this, even though Seagal is at the moment, he's still in the, just researching process. He's not, committed to anything going on yet. So what do? They set a trap for him in a supposedly damaged, like, pump station, where they fly him out there, and it looks like the bit in Cliffhanger when they're flying the helicopter out there, and all the villains are in one helicopter together with their guns and everything like that. And they lead him to this pump station where he gets in like his full like hazmat looking suit and everything like that. He gets in there. What does he find? He finds his tortured and killed friend, which is just a horrifying image to see him like
Yeah,
like,
because this
in
dude's
the- in
like
the oil and everything.
75, like not a
just
strong
a frail
looking
old
man.
guy.
Yeah,
surrounded by dynamite, which they then explode from the helicopter while Seagal's forest is inside.
his body
But he
just
sees
flies.
it just in time. Yeah, when
That
when he
shot
goes
is so
flying
funny.
out that explosion, it has to be a dummy.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's like ragdoll physics. He just
Yeah.
that body flies across the screen. It's hilarious.
So good.
It's such a funny shot, man.
It is.
Yeah, but
Especially
but
knowing it's
because-
Seagal's character and he always plays him so strong and like, doesn't usually get into too much physical danger.
No, it's definitely a very different reaction to an explosion than the one we saw in the opening scene, where he's just
Right.
slowly walking away from it and it engulfs the entire background of the frame
Yeah.
and everything like that.
For sure.
But Seagal is one tough dude, So he not only does he survive that, but he actually also survives the elements. And the natives find him because sort of like a polar bear is there, and the dog sleds show up and they get him and they find him in his big old suit. And they basically go, you know what? This guy survived out there for that long. He's got to be a native. So he becomes one with the tribe. They decide that he is the spiritual successor of their leader, and that
is
he's
right.
going to be the one who's going to do the eco terror on their behalf, but not until he he has gone on this spiritual journey. And there's like 20 minutes of him just going on this spiritual journey where he's going to heal up, and afterward he's going to kill everyone. But at the moment he's got to recover, and he does this whole thing with like a straight up vision quest thing, as Jamie was talking about earlier.
Dude, when that shot of him
Jumping out of the water?
Oh, that's great. That is great. Great way to end the vision quest. But I was talking about the very beginning where he enters the vision quest and he just gets touched on the forehead by a feather, and then he just like faints. Like he closes his eyes and the vision quest starts. Next thing you know, we're at like a camp, like a bonfire with just a bunch of naked women and men, and they're all like throat singing, and it's the craziest fucking thing I've ever seen in a Seagal film.
He literally becomes one with the land and with nature and with the animals, and because
Then
they
he
said
sees,
the
like, a
bear was
pit
a
of
tool
oil, and
that
it's
was
like-
made to be feared by man, but modern men don't fear the bear or respect the land, so he's going to become that bear. He literally, in this vision, he fights a bear and kills a bear to become the bear king in this fucking vision.
And then what Andrew was saying, he just bursts out of the lake like in the slow-mo, just it's glimmering, it's like shining, all the water on his body. It's so funny, man. It's great.
Hold on. The one craziest part that we didn't mention of this vision quest is, once again, during this, I was like, okay, so he was given all the money in the world, and he was like, this is what I want to see on the screen, which is just incredible to me.
So good.
But there's a part where he's walking through a cave, and it's supposed to be, I think, like that bit from Empire Strikes Back, where like Luke is walking through and he fights Vader in that dream bit and whatever. I think it's supposed to be like, again, it's supposed to be sort of like a vision of what kind of person
What's
are you
to
going to be,
come, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And what happens is he sees a naked native girl moaning and gesturing towards her, and the bed being like, come here, Steven, come here and have sex with me. And what does he do? He looks back at her and he gives her the little like pray salute. He gives her a little like, I'm sorry,
prayers up,
there is
but
no
I am too
time.
spiritual. Yes,
there's no time for horny. We got to get some wisdom. And he walks instead over to the little old lady, who makes him reach his hand into the water, and then when he pulls his hand out of the water, his hand is covered in oil. Because it's supposed to be this visual metaphor for what the future is going to look like.
Seagal.
And I just love that Seagal had to include a bit of him being like a Volcel king in order to achieve this mission.
Absolutely.
Like there's no reason.
There is
to
no
include
time to
that bit.
fuck right now.
He is definitely one of those actors though where like I went on a podcast recently to like talk about a Tom Cruise movie, and Cruising for a Reviewsin' it's called, and like I was sort of saying that Cruise to me has always played like quite quite non-sexual characters. You know, it's quite rare, I think, that especially in any sort of later stages of his career, that he doesn't kind of have love interests in the traditional way and stuff. He seems like quite a sort of celibate character in a lot of his movies, and that's kind of how Seagal strikes me in a lot of stuff, where it's like he clearly considers himself as like irresistible to women.
Yeah.
But it just kind of never comes off like that in the movies. And what I really loved about the whole Vision Quest thing is that just as a specific aspect of the movie, it ties in so perfectly to, again, everything that we know about him by this point and the way he chooses to portray himself, which is...
Oh, yeah. He's straight up saying that I went from CIA agent to honorary indigenous warrior.
Right.
Yeah, and like everything else about his characters in all of his movies, it is so unearned. He just gets like dynamited in the back and falls over.
Yeah.
They find him. They find him and they're like, "Oh no, this guy's legit. Let's imbue him with all the stuff." And he wakes up and goes, "Done. All right, I'm all ready to."
Even though he was previously seen as second in command to Michael Caine, who they and the EPA are all protesting him, at his sort of press conferences about this rig that he's building, talking about the environmental consequences of what he's doing, and not only that, the effect on their lives and their drinking water that's poisoning their babies and things like that.
And speaking
so
on
they find his second in command in like the middle of sort of like the mountains.
Yeah, and once
and they're
again,
like, this guy is our chosen warrior.
We start this character with that line, for 350 thou I'd fuck anything once, and now within like a half hour, 45-minute span with no real like progression that you can see too much, he becomes this like spiritual awakened master of nature. And it's just it's great.
It's just completely unearned, and like in the previous movie where he's like, I was in the CIA doing all that stuff with you, but it's bad when you do it.
Right.
Like I've gone from being an oil rig worker to, like you said, honorary native warrior. And like you said, he does dedicate like a chunk of screen time to both like being taken to the community and then having his vision quest and everything and leaving. But in the context of like actual time, it's like he's there for, a couple of days or whatever while they patch him up, and he has his little vision quest and he leaves. And by the time he goes, like he leaves, and then the henchmen, John C. McGinley and the other henchmen, show up looking for him. And then they say, "Oh, the old man's coming right at me," and they shoot the chief and kill him. Once again, an old man who gets to get hurt so that Seagal can be mad about it without getting hurt himself.
We got two in this movie.
It's either his wife and child or an old guy he likes.
Yeah, and
I also love too Michael Caine's reaction to McGinley when he gets back. He's like, "Okay, so you didn't find Taft, but you killed an unarmed native man. That's what you're telling me."
And but like but then when he sees Joan Chen, who is playing the chief's daughter, and they hear that he's been killed, he says, "I loved your father. Your father loved me." Like, it's like you met him like 2 days ago, bro.
It's been 3 days, bro.
Yeah, like, and you were unconscious for the majority of it. Like, he goes straight out of like mercenary oil worker to like, oh no, my father-in-law died. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Well, and not only that is the emotional excuse for the actual violence that he ends up doing in the film.
Absolutely.
Because like as that, like very quickly it transitions to, this is where it gets into the the first blood aspect of the film.
Yeah, he has a background.
Michael Caine calls in some like American mercenaries who like just finished destroying the Philippines or something. That's what he says. Led by R. Lee Ermey. From Full Metal Jacket, obviously, and he gets into like a series of fights with these dudes, because I think at first he goes back to the oil old man's house to go and find the proof, and he finds a lot of the goons. Michael Caine's goons are like hanging out there, and it's like one of the first like major shootouts in the film where he
like Jamie said when they show up, he says, "Ooh, some people for me to play with."
Yeah,
time for me to play
here. Yeah, so fun.
Yeah, it's such a weird tone where, like, you know, he has once again a very, in the screenplay and in the way that he's intentionally done it, he has a very emotional and angry reason to do the things that he's about to do. But when he does the violence, he doesn't go, "This is for my friend, you freaks," or whatever.
Yeah,
or,
he's stoked about it.
He goes, "Ooh, I get to kill people."
Yeah,
like
it's fun. Like it's just a hobby.
Now my
and
favorite
there's some
part of the
incredible,
day.
horrifying beats in this where like he shotguns a dude's chest out.
Yeah.
And the dude keeps yelling at him after his chest has been blown out.
Yes.
So he shoots him in the head.
Just absolute psycho areas.
And the explosive shots of like is this the one when they're in the cabin? Is this is that this gunfight? Because
this is the cabin one.
Things get just wrecked. Like the way that he set off these like the ammo explosives or whatever they do for on-set explosions when it's like a gunfight are unbelievable. Like there's just broken statues going everywhere. Windows are being smashed. Like the squib work is unbelievable in this. It's
honestly,
excessive.
I'm guessing he had to have learned some stuff from working with Flynn on Out for Justice, because like
that makes sense.
The squib work on that movie is the only one previously that was as
crazy,
like, as brutal as this movie is. Like when he's killing people, it is almost like horror movie levels of violence. Like there's in the big finale at one point, he shoves a knife into a dude's eyeball and then smashes his head into a wall so that the knife goes deeper into his head, and you see it. You see all of that. And like this is a thing where he's like, he doesn't want to do this apparently. Even though like I fucking like swear to God, he's doing obviously like this cabin fight sequence where he's killing all these people, and then these mercenaries get called in, and Michael Caine's talking about how Alaska is a third world country, he needs to get under control, saying insane shit like that. When he does that big chase scene through the mountains where he's like setting traps and he's taking down choppers like straight out of First Blood, there's like horse chasing, there's a dude he pierces through a tree, and another dude whose chest explodes due to the booby traps that he's setting and stuff like that. And you're trying to reconcile some of the beautiful footage of these horses and these amazing locations and some of the great like graceful stunt work that's being done with like the brutal violence that he's throwing in there. But it gets to a point where once again there's this bit where like it's, you know, are you going to get the revenge for us, or like what are you going to do, like that bit with Sharon Stone in Above the Law. And there's this amazing thing where he's like, you know what, I never really wanted to do this. I can't remember exactly what the line is, but it's something along the lines of, you know, I never wanted this to resort to violence. I never wanted it to go here. And then what does he do right after he says that? He presses the button and a secret door moves in the cabin to reveal like literally a militia ammunition supply.
I love that the photo is a bald eagle as well, that he moves like in order to get to the door. And then when he gets into the room, he doesn't just like show his stuff off. He just starts reciting gun models and the ammunition that goes with them. And he's just like, grab this. We're going to need this. We're going to need that. We're going to like it. It's just it's a great little moment. And it honestly lingers longer than is even necessary, which I like. I think he just really wanted to like show off all the guns in that shack. It's very, very funny.
Yeah, it's really incredible. You get this contrasting of like these images of nature and the wilderness, and he being a part of it, fending off these exterior political, corporate, like military forces, and he's just like the cold reality of this war. are of this world, is that, sometimes you gotta do violence. Bam, smash cut to armory closet. Bam, he is now like infiltrating the oil rig, basically killing every single person he comes
single-handedly.
across. like he's like a slasher villain with like exploding flying dummies and like really gruesome squib work and bone breaking.
And speaking of
everything,
all this,
and not before every single person he kills has to say, man, I'm being killed by the coolest guy that ever lived.
As this is all happening, as he's kind of approaching the oil rig and like taking people out and setting stuff up and everything, Ali Ermey gets to have his speech, because up until this point, as they've been having their chase through the mountains and everything, they've been like, who is this guy? And they're like,
right.
Weird. We looked at his personnel file and it was all redacted at the back. And Ali
I think Michael Caine says something along the lines of try to imagine the ultimate fucking nightmare, and that won't even come close to this man when he's pissed.
Yeah.
So here's the little speech. Here's the little speech that
Ali Ermey gets a better one.
Oh yeah, this is my favorite fucking moment ever.
He says
it's so long.
And again, perfect encapsulation of the tone of what Seagal's all about, which is Seagal is the coolest guy in the world, and when he's not on screen, everybody else should be talking about how fucking badass he is, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So he says, my guy in DC tells me that we are not dealing with a student here, we're dealing with the professor. Anytime the military has an operation that can't fail, they call this guy in to train the troops, okay? He's the kind of guy that would drink a gallon of gasoline so he can piss in your campfire. You could drop this guy off at the Arctic Circle wearing a pair of bikini underwear without his toothbrush, and tomorrow afternoon he's going to show up at your poolside with $1 million smile and a fistful of pesos. This guy's a professional, you got me? If he reaches this rig, we're all going to be nothing but a big goddamn hole right in the middle of Alaska. So let's go find him and kill him and get rid of the son of a bitch.
Amazing. Like, dude, the beauty of that monologue, and I think I watched it like 3 times. I just kept rewinding it because I couldn't believe how long it went. Because with these kind of like setups for somebody's reputation, there's a certain like rhythmic beat that you kind of find when you stop and just be like, that's my definitive statement on the man. And I just love that Ernie just goes. He just goes and goes. And when you think it's over, it's only halfway over until the point that he's talking about like some dude in a bikini with $1 million pesos.
Circle.
Like, yeah, it's just like, it's the most random fucking thing ever. And I loved every moment of that. It's probably the best kind of like, reputation speech action thing that I've ever seen in a movie like this. So
reputational exposition.
Yeah, and then I also love Billy Bob Thornton has a small little moment, I think it's after this, where he's talking about how he wants to take down Seagal so that he like feels good about himself, so that he's like proud of himself or something like that. He's talking about straight up satirical at a certain point.
Yeah, he's talking about his stock. He goes, he's like, what do you think? Do you think I should have my stock in or my stock out? Because I kind of feel like a pussy with the stock out, and I feel like if I killed him with the stock in, I'd feel good about myself.
Like, that's straight up a great joke. And it's that thing we were talking about earlier where we can never really decide whether Seagal knows that this is kind of satirical, but in honestly a good way. But because he doesn't know it or not, we're not sure. It's hard to say, like, if this is ironic, if it's completely sincere, if it's very difficult at times to tell.
Oh yeah. It's all such a strange brew, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
because he'll throw in these comedic beats like that in between him like throwing
demolishing people.
McGinley into a helicopter
right.
blade so that his blood sprays everywhere like it's like the end of Last Boy Scout.
Yeah, and there's nothing ironic about the violence. Like, it's just brutality. So it's an interesting contrast.
Yep, and then he's like running through the giant fires as he's blowing up the rig with his bandana. And also, I had to wonder that blowing up the rig, he is spilling the oil everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, this can't be good for the environment. There's so many explosions, so much black smoke just coming into the air. It's so funny.
I was absolutely thinking about that while watching it, where I was like, the entire thing is this big environmental statement. And it's like, when you see in old movies, like where they just just put a whole bunch of dynamite in a building and nuke the thing for that, gigantic wall of flame kind of image. And then if you see any shots of it afterwards, it is a fucking huge plume of thick black smoke going up into the sky. And there are like multiple points throughout this movie where they do huge explosions, huge columns of black smoke. And then, like he's saying, the solution to the issue of all of the pollution that's being done by this oil company is to just blow up a fucking oil reserve and rig and tanker and everything
and kill
in the middle of
everyone
Alaska.
involved.
There is a nice scene that I like as it comes up to the confrontation with Michael Caine, where all the alarms are going off. There's explosions and gunfights happening and everything. It almost has, in a bit of a way, a tiny bit of that like James Bond shootout at the villain's lair kind of vibe,
sure, kind of.
And there's this bit where Michael Caine's there and saying, hey, everybody in this control room has to keep doing what they're doing and everything. I'll go check on this thing. And he walks out of the room, and the guy he was just talking to just kind of looks after him for a second and internally goes, fuck that, stands up and picks up his jacket and just runs out of the room, and everybody else does the same thing, which again is a funny beat in the movie for a guy who's like, he's just paid to work at the oil rig. He's like, I'm not fucking getting killed by some psycho who's through here throwing grenades at people and shit like that. A whole bunch of stuff's on fire.
As like a joke on their kind of small character level, but that the entire reason is just because Seagal wanted more characters to be afraid of him, which is great. It works in both ways.
I can't be here when he arrives.
Exactly, the man himself.
And then,
in that big fight scene, he engages in like knife fighting and pole fighting. He steals Arlie Ermey's shotgun from him and blows his chest out of his back.
He does that to even three guys in this movie.
Yeah,
bad guys in Steven Seagal movies do have an unfortunate tendency to have him dead to rights with a gun, gun pointed
like what
straight
Arlie
at
Ermey
him.
does.
It's the same thing that happens in Above the Law when the car full of goons from the drug dealer roll up on him. And they've got like a shotgun and shit, but two of the other guys have machetes and baseball bats. And they're like, sure, we could shoot you, but I'm going to let my friend beat you up, see? And he just immediately takes the shotgun off the dude.
I also think it's funny that...
Well, and it's so funny after Arlie Ermey getting that monologue, too, though. Like, Arlie Ermey is like, this guy is fucking, like, Freddy Krueger-ass shit. He pulls up to him with a shotgun. He could just shoot him, and he just walks close enough to him where Seagal just disarms him and shoots him.
Yeah, he's like, I'd better immediately get into reaching range of this guy. And even, like, he's pointed to him, and he's like, yeah, make one move, and I'm going to blow your head off. And you're like, you've been saying the whole time that the point of this exercise is to fucking murk this dude. What are we waiting for? Where are we trying to get to from here?
Well,
I need to take you outside.
We're waiting for Seagal to humiliate him.
He also has that line at the end where he has Caine like set up on that rope, like he's hanging from his hands or whatever, and he says the line, "I wouldn't dirty my bullets." Like, so he like, I'm not going to kill Caine. And it's just so funny that we've seen him shoot numerous less substantial people than Caine throughout this whole movie. And now he's like, nah, you don't get the gun. Like, I just thought that was absolutely hilarious. And then Caine also has this really disgusting, like, filthy dialogue where he says something like, he's talking to Forrest, and he says, like, we fucked better-looking hookers in Bangkok. Like, shit like that.
Yeah, because he's just the most racist man you've ever seen.
Like, it's so fucking bad.
And so he goes, you've made millions suffer. You're scum of the earth. And then he, like, lassos Michael Caine.
Right.
And holds him over the oil. And instead of shooting him and executing him, does he shoot it, or does he cut?
He shoots the rope.
Lasso rope.
I think he shoots the rope. Yeah, instead of shooting Caine, because that's where he says the "dirty my bullets" line.
Because I wouldn't dirty my bullets like with you, and then he falls into the oil drum in time for it to like explode.
Yeah, and then everything explodes, and he makes a grand escape, and he's the hero. He saved the planet.
Yeah, he's like doing his floppy arm run, jumping over pipes as the entire rig explodes around him.
There's one other death in here that I think is worth mentioning because again, Seagal had to put this into the movie.
He kills like 30 people on screen viciously in this movie. It's insane.
There's another character that we haven't actually mentioned at this point, and that is throughout the entire movie, Michael Caine's villainous character is being aided by some type of like assistant or executive at his company, this woman who is giving him all the ideas on how to do PR and all that sort of stuff, right? So she's like complicit in everything. She is also there at the point where everybody just starts running out of the oil rig.
Yeah, I don't know how I forgot to mention this. This is one of the more gruesome deaths.
It's so funny though, because she's just like, fuck that, I'm out of here. And she runs out and gets into her car and goes, I'm out of here, and drives away. And then she just looks up and goes, oh no, throws her arms up in front of her face and drives straight into like a head height sheet of metal that I'm assuming cleaves her head from her body, which is suspended just below like a tanker full of petrol or oil and then explodes.
She gets shredded by that steel, but she actually lives long enough to watch the gas slowly creep towards her car and catch on fire and explode her too. So like she gets a solid like 15 seconds of I'm in horrible pain from driving into this sheet metal and now I'm going to explode.
But I have to anticipate it.
It's very funny that she doesn't actually get like, get killed directly by Seagal or anything. She doesn't warrant that apparently, but he's like,
do you think it's because he didn't want to kill a woman? Has he ever done that in a movie?
I don't know, but I'm going to say he just forgot.
I think he has no problems with killing a woman.
I think he just kind of forgot, and then at some point he was like, "Oh,
maybe this is a good time to bring up the longest section on his Wikipedia, which is allegations and lawsuits."
Yes.
Maybe he wanted to avoid that completely. That's why he didn't ever kill a woman on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you ever have any interest, half of his Wikipedia page is lawsuits and allegations from 1995 to 2020.
Yeah, oddly enough, not mostly his filmography.
No.
Yes, Kelly LeBrock divorced him amid accusations of domestic violence. Lots and lots of lawsuits for sexual harassment. Jenny McCarthy said that she auditioned for maybe Under Siege, and that he was like, as part of your audition, you have to take off your clothes.
Steven! Oh, my God.
Steven.
Luckily, though, we haven't really been talking about him this whole time like he's some great guy.
Oh, no, this guy's an egomaniac, absolutely.
Absolutely.
But egomaniacs can make some very interesting art.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing that's so crazy about all this is because once again, like Above the Law, the central idea behind the movie is a righteous cause,
right? And it always is.
Yeah, and his idea of getting across that righteous cause is that he eviscerates as many human bodies on screen as one could in the name of
whatever it is he's fighting
balancing
for.
Nature. Like, it's just...
Really, whatever hobby he took up that week, and he's like, I care about pollution now.
I'm going to prove how much I love Alaska by setting, 500,000 liters of oil on fire. Yeah.
Yeah, and spilling all the oil into the land that I blow up and everything like that, which is crazy because, again, after this big final set piece where he blows up the entire rig, he goes to the Alaska State Capitol and literally delivers a TED Talk on,
and it's long too,
pollution.
Has stock footage of like animals being covered in oil and pollution and air pollution and factories. Like, it goes on for a good 5 to 10 minutes.
Well, there's a few versions of this, right? There's a few.
Yeah, oh, is there?
There's the in the final cut, it's 7 minutes long, which is about 5 to 6 minutes too long, I think. But the story behind it says that he filmed around 40 minutes of footage for this message and wanted to use all of it, right? Now, the part that I'm not 100% clear about is that there was a preview screening. He had a lot of pressure from Warner Brothers to cut it down, and there was a preview screening where apparently
people were like throwing shit at the screen.
People
and
were
laughing and like
booing and laughing for the entire sequence, right? So I don't know whether the original test preview that they showed was like some absolutely wild length, or I don't know if it was like the 11 minutes and then he cut it down to 7.
Can you imagine being like 20 minutes in that speech and realizing you're only halfway through?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Oh,
It's like the feeling I had. Like the feeling I had the first time I watched Team America, where like it was just interesting, like as a piece of art for someone to say, this is the form that this entire thing is going to take. Like I'm sure that you've both you've both read the things about like what a nightmare the production of that was, because they had to get puppeteers who could do all the stuff and figure out ways to do it and everything, you know. Yeah, like fucking up a shot where they're blowing up the pyramids and having to set it all up again, all that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, even knowing that going into it, I still had this sensation that I really remember the first time that I watched that, which was about 5 minutes in, having the conscious thought of, wow, they're really going to do the whole movie like this. Like, imagine that, but like this speech just going on.
Yeah, it's a giant speech about, you know, like the alternate engines and oil companies and big business and the corrupt government regulations, and we can't even read it all to you. I recommend just like looking it up.
Yeah.
Because
it's long.
He really does just go speak for 7 minutes on like very real pollution and real stats and money.
It doesn't.
And, like,
it switches from a Seagal film and just turns into his like Al Gore version of a documentary for 5 minutes. It's very strange. He's not even playing his character. Yeah, like it's just. Oh man.
Yeah, and it ends on the big thing of him being like. As long as there is profit to be made from polluting of our earth, companies and individuals will continue to do what they want. So we have to force these companies to operate safely and responsibly and with all our best interest in mind. So when they don't, we can take back our resources, and our hearts and our minds know to do what's right. Bless all of you.
And what better way to do that than by like blowing someone's back out with a fucking 12 gauge pump action?
Exactly.
That is the funniest thing, is that, you know, like you've just spent 30 minutes seeing some of the biggest squibs of the 90s, and Steven Seagal like completely like murking people like a straight up slasher villain with no regard for human life of any kind. And after he's shredded those, you know, human bodies on screen into pulp for your entertainment, he goes,
"Save the ducks."
Now, we need to protect our land and our hearts and our people.
This motherfucker does a 7-minute speech where he talks about plankton for a while.
Yeah.
Like, just wild stuff. We got to look after the plankton, baby.
And then I think he hugs one of the native men. I think it's the son of the older guy, and that's it. They're just that they roll the credits, and then there's shots of nature, and
there's a post-credit scene of him in the boat in the water watching the raven, which the old man who was murdered earlier has been reborn into this raven.
Right. Yeah, he saved the planet, man. Seagal did it.
He did it.
World peace and environmental change has been achieved.
That's right. No more global warming.
The coolest guy on the planet, just murking as many people as you can possibly imagine.
Until pollution was just wiped out. That's how it works.
Imagine
for it.
And this movie opened with him beating the racism out of a man. So what can't he do at this point?
Yeah, exactly. He can solve all problems with his fists.
Imagine how good he felt when he got that final print back. He was just that's it. This shit is done.
This is my masterpiece.
Pollution on lock from now on.
I mean, honestly, I'm going to agree with him, because pivoting towards reductive rating round, this I think is the one Seagal movie thus far that I'm going to give the 4 to.
Hell yeah.
Ooh.
for basically, just everything that we've said. I think that, part of it, I'm in that same realm as Jamie, where you can't tell how much of this is my enjoyment because it's just such a singular artifact that could have only come from one person's brain, and not necessarily that it's amazing, but then also that there is actually some pretty good craft on display when it comes to the action work, when it comes
surprisingly.
to, I mean, visually, that surreal dream sequence, some of the amazing location work that he gets done. I think he learned a lot from the action directors that he worked with on set when he helped produce their movies, and he got as much money as he's ever been personally given. He got as much free reign as he's ever been given, and he said, I want to do Rambo First Blood, but as if I was Tom Laughlin's Billy Jack. And that is such a crazy idea for a movie, and I think that he nails it. I think he nails both of those movies, and the combination of the two, and it's such a weird experience, but it's incredible. I was genuinely blown away watching this. Every development, I just got more and more into it. So yeah,
me too.
4 for me.
I'm also there with you. This is the best Seagal film that I've seen so far. I've seen 4, I guess. It's the ones that we've covered on the show. It's just amazing to me that
I think Out for Justice is pretty close.
Oh
for me,
yeah,
but
that might get a 4 on rewatch.
That movie, I spent the whole time dreaming of the John Flynn version versus the Seagal version.
Yeah, me too.
And this movie, I was like, it's nothing but pure Seagal.
Right, and that's why it works. It's because Steven Seagal knew that the only man capable of directing Steven Seagal was Steven Seagal. All right, and he pulled it off. You start off with his glorious entrance, which is just a foot to head and spin entrance, where it's like, yes, that's me. I'm Steven Seagal, and I'm on camera. Here we go. Leading up to the
followed
giant,
by the cheering of everyone
the cheering,
on
the
set.
giant explosion where it's just Seagal and a wall of fire in the background. Then the next scene, he's beating people up in a bar by playing slap hands and talking about the essence of a man. And then he's on a vision quest with it's one of the most batshit insane things I've ever seen, and it's the way it is purely because an absolute egomaniac got on the helm. So it's
God got just free control to make what's the coolest movie
in his
that you
brain
would want to watch.
Yeah, and it's amazing, and I think that it's a shame that this was the one that failed, because I feel like I would have liked to see a couple more directed by Seagals, because this was insane. It's just pure insanity. So yeah, I had a blast. 4 out of 5
for you, Andrew.
I feel like this is the first time that we're going to go all unanimous, fellas.
Nice.
Oh,
I think I will also give it the 4. I think it's it's not my number 1 favorite Seagal. I reckon that's probably Out for Justice or Fire Down Below, because
we got to check out Fire Down Below then.
Well, with covering these 4, right, you're getting a large part of the core of what I think of as like the Seagal essentials.
Yeah.
Because past a certain point, past even the Glimmer Man, which is also hilarious, you got your Under Siege 2, not that great.
Is the Glimmer Man the one with DMX in it?
No, that's
I think that's Exit Wounds.
No,
that's what I'm thinking of. Exit Wounds. Okay, I don't know what the Glimmer Man is then.
Yeah. Me neither, actually.
The Glimmer Man is one where it's a buddy cop movie with him and Keenan Ivory Wayans.
He has to play a buddy of somebody?
What?
A friend?
And it's set, well, as you can imagine, Keenan Ivory Wayans is very confused by his Oriental ways and his overt Buddhism throughout this movie. The whole setting, it's kind of like a moody 7, it's raining all the time kind of deal, and they're meant to be solving a serial killer case who is the Glimmer Man, and the serial killer is played by Stephen Tobolowsky.
What?
So that one's got a whole vibe to it, but
I think I'm just deciding I'm just gonna go and watch all the Seagals that I can find. I'm even gonna go up to the direct-to-video ones that he's doing now, where he's just sitting in a chair, and everyone still is like, "You're the best, coolest Marine that's ever lived," and he's just like eating a snack.
I do find him just like endlessly fascinating. It's even when he's doing lazy shit. the ego is so big that I can't help but be somewhat entertained by it. It's insane.
Well, look. Let me highly recommend Fire Down Below, because that has a lot of the things that you liked about this movie. It's got an environmental message. He plays an EPA agent who goes around fucking people up. And
okay, he just cut the middleman out there. He's like, I'm gonna be the CIA agent for the EPA.
And it's set like in the Appalachians, where Chris Christopherson's mining operation is burying toxic waste in their mines, and he goes down there to sort it out. And of course he becomes Southern for this movie because the Southerners. So he's just, well, howdy, ma'am, for just the whole thing. It's great.
That's like when in Out for Justice, doesn't he try to do like that super New York accent too? Like I love when he tries an accent. It's my favorite thing in the world.
Oh yeah, he goes like super Brooklyn for that.
Yeah.
So in this movie, he goes down there, pretends to be Southern while he's solving this case. He's wooing Marg Helgenberger from like CSI, and her brother is played by Stephen Lang. That his name? The guy from Avatar, you know?
Yep, that's the right guy.
Stephen Lang doing weird stuff. Like I said, Chris Christopherson is like the big bad guy. And there's a scene that absolutely blows my fucking mind. I would say it's even more perplexing than the hand slapping scene in this movie, which involves Steven Seagal just wandering over and starting to sit in with a bluegrass band in the middle.
And he just plays.
It's so good. It's so good. And it's just another venue for everybody to say, hey, you know this guy? Super
pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool. Oh my god.
So
dude,
if you're doing anything next, do Fire Down Below, because that's
I'm gonna go pick it up later today.
Yeah, I think that is my
after the workday today. I think all this weekend will be dedicated to some Seagal films.
I think
because I have been converted on Deadly Ground. I'm interested. I think I'm going to go back and rewatch some of the other ones at some point too that we watched, because it was like kind of my first time dealing with Seagal, and I feel like On Deadly Ground feels like, you know, like I understand the Seagal thing.
We understand the man now.
With that
the complicated man.
Yeah, I think that maybe the reason that Fire Down Below is probably my favorite of his is because it's kind of the perfect synthesis of all of the things about these different movies right before he completely falls off a cliff career-wise. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, it's the environmental messaging, it's the mysterious backstory for him, it's that everybody thinks he's super cool and respectable. He has all these amazing talents. Everybody loves him so much. Meanwhile, he just kind of looks like shit and is confusing. Hyper violent with people. It's got Harry Dean Stanton as the old man who gets beat up to make him mad. It's just
even though he hardly ever seems like on a personal level when he's talking to people that he ever expresses anything beyond like mild annoyance at people.
Well, this movie
before brutally massacring them.
Well, because he's going undercover in this movie, he has to win over the local Appalachian town that's suspicious of outsiders. So he has to do a lot of Southern charm in this movie. So to me, I think that I would probably rank that one first as the movie I go back to the most. Or
I'm sold.
for the reason that I'm really glad we got to get into detail about on this episode, a great deal of detail, which is just how fucking perplexing his successful film career, the beginning of it.
Yeah, the first 5 years or so.
Yeah, I think it's maybe the first...
more like 10?
Well, I want to say the first 4 or 5 of his movies were all just like profitable. They were all just money makers for the studio, you know.
Yeah.
Above the Law.
Yeah, well,
Hard
no,
to
yeah,
Kill.
all Above the Law, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, Out for Justice, Under Siege, and Under Siege, I think, was the biggest hit. No,
Yeah, everything up to Under Siege was a moneymaker for the studio. So it was a vindication in the sense of, will a movie make money if we put this guy in it? Let alone anyone making a case for him, And then Under Siege was a big fucking hit. Under Siege, I remember being like a big deal. And then
that's also Above the Law director Andrew Davis too.
And then he did On Deadly Ground. Immediately had the keys taken back off him for directing. Slid straight into Under Siege 2, which was very underwhelming and not particularly well received. Then he had to do his first non-big star role in Executive Decision. So he's
with Kurt Russell. I've been meaning to watch that.
Yeah, he's really on the downward slide at this point. The Glimmer Man has some very interesting stuff, but you get the sense it's pretty chopped up. Reading interviews with Stephen Tobolowsky about the filming of that movie is very interesting. And yeah, then you're sort of into Fire Down Below, and to me, that one's just the mwah. So check that one out. I will still give 4 stars to this one because isn't it such an important representation of everything that Steven Seagal is and all of the interesting contradictions that makes.
It's completely unfiltered and unhinged. Seagal, like all the way,
which is
an absolute blast.
The best version of Seagal for sure.
All right, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for everything. That was a big episode.
Thanks for listening to our 3-hour Seagal episode. Hell yeah,
Seagal earned it.
He did.
We just talked about Above the Law, 1988, and On Deadly Ground, 1994. Thanks so much, Andrew, for joining us and going crazy with us. I know it's so late in the night for you, but if you've got anything to plug, this is where we would have you do that.
Oh, just check out Bunta Vista. It's a podcast.
Check out Bunta Vista.
Absolutely.
Technically a podcast. We were trying to figure out how to describe it recently. And I think we settled on the least important news stories of the week, brought to you by the least informed people. Talk about that.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Hell yeah! Well, I mean, I went on for a Christmas episode just like probably a year or two ago where we talked all of our favorite Christmas genre movies, which was a lot of fun.
It was good stuff.
So definitely check out Andrew, check out Bunta Vista, and for our listeners, we are going to be back in 1 week's time where we are going to be doing your patron voted episode. Which, speaking of which, we are going to have the new poll going up for patrons soon, where you guys get to nominate the double features and then vote on them and whatnot. But we're going to be next week. We're going to be doing the last one you guys voted on, which is a crazy episode.
Oh yeah.
Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, 1974, by Sam Peckinpah. And Billy Friedkin's Sorcerer from 1977.
Oh, wow.
Which is a really insane pairing. It's probably going to be another massive episode.
Yep.
And it was nominated by Riley Pelling, who pitched it as foreigners on long, futile, nihilistic journeys through Latin America. And that is a very good description of both of those films. So we are going to be talking about those two. It's going to be crazy. That's your bonus episode, exclusive on Patreon. Again, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast for that. And then next week, 2 weeks from this episode, we're going to be having special guests from the Important Cinema Club podcast, Will Sloan and his co-host Justin Decloux, and we are going to be talking about Albert Pyun the first time with Justin, who actually wrote the book on Albert Pyun. Or Pyun. I always mess up how to say his name. But we talked about him once with the Jean-Claude Van Damme film Cyborg.
Oh, yes.
Which is Jean-Claude Van Damme drop kicking the apocalypse.
I like this world.
And we talked about Nemesis as well, which is an incredible film. And so on the next one, we're going to be talking with them. We're going to be talking about Radioactive Dreams, which is his almost kind of like weird Streets of Fire-esque noir film that Pyun did, and we're going to be pairing that with his movie Doll Man, which is another kind of quasi-apocalyptic noir that involves a detective who is very tiny.
Oh, you're getting into the full moon features.
That's right. We're going crazy in 2 weeks' time.
Oh man.
That being said, I think that wraps it up for everything this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy.
Hell yeah.